Chapter 231. What made Zhuo Leng even more worried was that his true essence was being consumed very quickly, but his opponent didn't seem to be exhausted at all, and even had a smile on his face. This forced him to change his strategy. He intended to decide the outcome with one blow, so as to avoid any unexpected problems. Black Sun burst. Zhuo Leng suddenly jumped back, and then the lightning on his long sword disappeared, replaced by a burning black flame. As he retreated, he lightly tapped on the rock, and his body seemed to bounce back, his speed even faster than before. After fighting for so long, you finally used your martial skill. Good. Ling Xiao suddenly pulled out the drifting snow sword and stabbed out. Giant spirit kill. At that moment, the surrounding Yuan Qi seemed to be absorbed by the giant sword remnant soul and completely integrated into the sword. Boom! Before the two swords came close, the terrifying true essence power had already collided. It was the first time that the giant spirit kill was so easily blocked. In the air, the snow-white true essence and the black and red true essence constantly collided, producing a crackling sound that was very unpleasant to hear. Whoosh! Ling Xiao quickly retreated, and in an instant he was dozens of steps away. He had lost to Zhuo Leng in terms of attack. It could be seen that Zhuo Leng had increased his true essence output to more than 90%, close to 100%. Under such circumstances, the advantage of his cultivation was revealed. Zhuo Leng wouldn't be merciful after the successful attack. He chased after Ling Xiao like a shadow, and the long sword wrapped in black flame shook again, stabbing at Ling Xiao. The giant spirit kill couldn't defeat the opponent, so it should be the disadvantage of his martial soul. Ling Xiao made this judgment when he retreated. In that case, he would use his complete martial soul to fight the enemy. In an instant, the giant sword remnant soul behind him retreated, and was replaced by the clearer blood shadow martial soul. This was Ling Xiao's highest grade martial soul, belonging to the second grade of the complete soul, void body. Blood blade shadow king kill. A sword slashed out and blood danced. Ling Xiao's figure was actually faintly discernible. Ding! This sword hit the weakest part of Zhuo Leng's long sword, and finally blocked Zhuo Leng's continuous attacks. But even so, it didn't cause any harm to Zhuo Leng. Neither side was able to do anything to the other. The Black Sun Explosive Sword is a quasi-transcendent sword art that is complemented by the Amaterasu Black Flame's divine art. Together, its power is no weaker than an entry-level transcendent martial art. That's right. This sword contains the divine fire of Amaterasu. Its power is very domineering. Ling Xiao actually managed to block it. He was able to block it because of his skill. Otherwise, he would have been defeated. Master Baiyun's voice sounded. As expected, he was very disappointed with Ling Xiao's obsession with improving his skills. Perhaps it was because of this that he felt a sense of dislike towards Ling Xiao. Let's see how you block this move. Zhuo Leng retreated again. Then the ninja soul behind him pulled a strange big bow. Zhuo Leng used the fine quality sword in his hand, which was wrapped in black flames, as the arrow of this big bow. By now, Zhuo Leng could see that the power of his move was definitely above Ling Xiao's, and Ling Xiao was relying on his skills to deal with it. Therefore, he had to use a move that even Ling Xiao couldn't see through. In other words, this was the move that he was brewing, the transcendent martial skill that belonged to him. The terrifying power directly locked onto Ling Xiao, and the terrifying pressure was constantly exerted on him. This made him feel that this move really couldn't be avoided or blocked by pure technique. He could only meet force with force. Boom! The mountain shook violently again. The long sword pierced through the air and directly pierced towards Ling Xiao. Divine fire of Amaterasu. Ling Xiao had encountered many opponents in the past, but this was the first time he had encountered someone as difficult to deal with as this one. But he didn't find it strange. How could a disciple that Master Baiyun picked not have any strength? What's more, Zhuo Leng was already at the early 9th level of the martial vein. He was only at the late 8th level of the martial vein. But even so, he didn't think he would lose. Wasn't it just a transcendent martial art? He also knew it. These thoughts only flashed through his mind in the blink of an eye. He had already decided what he was going to do next. He held the drifting snow sword in his right hand and pointed it at Zhuo. Without any fancy moves, he just lightly pierced the sword. Whoosh! No one could describe the speed of this sword. When they saw Ling Xiao's hand tremble slightly, a sword light had already shot out. The sword light condensed the terrifying Snow Lotus true essence, which actually froze the air in its path. It turned into a white light that was hard to see with the naked eye, and directly split the black flame into two. Not only that, the black flame seemed to have met its natural enemy, and actually condensed into ice cubes and fell to the ground. Puff! A red dot appeared between Zhuo eyebrows. A trace of blood seeped out. He didn't even have any reaction. The combination of Snow Lotus True Essence and Snow Lotus Sword Technique was simply the most perfect combination. This was also the reason why Ling Xiao didn't use True Essence of a higher grade. What kind of sword technique is this? How can it be so fast? How can it be so powerful? After the sword strike, there was complete silence on the life and death cliff. After a while, someone exclaimed, but Master Bai Yun had already pounced on Zhuo. He was thinking of all kinds of ways to save Zhuo's life. Even he didn't have time to react to Ling Xiao's sword strike, which was enough to show the terrifying speed. You actually killed him. Master Bai Yun struggled for a long time, but to no avail. Zhuo had completely lost his breath. This sword strike didn't just simply pierce through his head, it even directly destroyed his soul. Even an immortal wouldn't be able to save him, not to mention Master Bai Yun, who was just an ordinary, extraordinary warrior. Due to his rage, Master Bai Yun's terrifying aura surged violently, scaring everyone around him. The first to bear the brunt was Ling Xiao. He didn't want to suffer such a loss, so he had already used the Cloud Dragon Divine Travel and was dozens of feet away from Master Bai Yun. He knew this old man very well. He was very biased. Even though it was a battle of life and death, he killed Zhuo, so this old man would definitely fight with his life on the line. He wouldn't stupidly stay in the same place and wait for death. In terms of speed, Master Bai Yun might be faster than him, but he had the Blood Shadow martial spirit, so he could escape and hide at the same time. As long as he was far enough away, he wouldn't be afraid of this old man killing him. Yes, I killed him, but this is the life and death cliff. Life and death are predestined. Master, are you going to avenge him? Ling Xiao was very uncomfortable, so he spoke very impolitely. Ling Xiao, don't add fuel to the fire. Dai Yuling was a little anxious. She and Ling Xiao were friends, so she really didn't want to see Ling Xiao killed by the furious Master Bai Yun on the spot. Let him speak. Master Bai Yun's beard kept trembling. Obviously, he was very angry. Ming Tian and Zhuo were his two favorite disciples. Now that one of them was killed, he really couldn't calm down. Master, you agreed to a battle of life and death. Originally, his cultivation was higher than mine, so you thought he could kill me, right? I'm sorry I've disappointed you. Ling Xiao's face was full of sarcasm. Don't call me master. I don't have a disciple like you. Master Bai Yun roared. I really don't want to be your disciple. A biased and unfair person like you disgusts me. Ling Xiao snorted coldly and made preparations to escape. Today, even if they completely shed all pretense of cordiality, it wouldn't be a big deal. I'll kill you. Master Bai Yun actually moved, and a terrifying palm was blasted out. Chapter 232. Bang! Master Bai Yun's palm strike landed on a boulder, which instantly turned into dust. Ling Xiao did not move from the beginning to the end. Through his mountain river martial spirit, he could tell that Master Bai Yun's attack was not aimed at him. Behind the boulder, a figure flashed out. This person was dressed in black, and his body was covered in dust. He was in a sorry state. He probably did not expect Master Bayun to create a diversion. Ha ha ha, Martial Uncle Bayun is really not old. You actually noticed me. When this person appeared, his true origin vibrated slightly. The dust on his body immediately disappeared, and he returned to his original appearance. At this time, a silver moon palace pattern was clearly exposed on his clothes. He definitely did not look more than 30 years old. He had a smile on his face, but there was anger and embarrassment in his eyes. Why are you here again? Master Bayun's expression was somewhat ugly. In fact, he had already noticed that someone was spying on him. He took this opportunity to vent his anger. He was indeed very angry that Ling Xiao killed Zuolong. He even wanted to slap him to death. However, no matter how biased he was, he still had a bottom line. In the end, he could not do it. Moreover, Zuolong was already dead. If Ling Xiao died as well, his loss would be great. In the end, he only regretted that he could not stop this life-and-death battle. Of course, Ling Xiao did not know what he was thinking. He was also not interested in knowing. He was shocked that this person in black was so close to him, but he did not notice him. It was enough to show that this person was very strong. Thinking of the little Taoist boy saying that someone injured Master Bayun a few days ago, there was no doubt that it was this person. He quickly distanced himself. Then, the figure of the blue-clothed woman he met in the Dragon Submission Mountain range appeared in his mind. The reason was that both the blue-clothed woman and this person had a silver moon palace pattern on their clothes. Could they be disciples of the same sect? Moon palace pattern? Yuehua school. Master Bayun was also a disciple of Yuehua school. This made sense. Martial uncle, you're old. It's a waste to keep such outstanding disciples. How about you give me 2? I don't want much, just 2. As he spoke, the black-robed man's gaze lingered on Ming Tian and Ling Xiao for a moment. Clearly, he wanted Ming Tian and Ling Xiao. Don't mention this again. I've already said that they are all my disciples. They will definitely be able to enter Yuehua school. There's no need for them to become your disciples. Grandmaster Bayun waved his hand and said resolutely. At this moment, the 11 disciples, including Ling Xiao, were a little nervous. This young man who suddenly appeared should be stronger than Master Bayun. Otherwise, with Grandmaster Bayun's temperament, he would have already attacked. He would definitely not have stopped. What if you become my master's disciple? The black-clothed man said with a smile. Your master? Yes, my master. He entered Yuehua school at the same time as you, Martial Uncle Bayun. However, your talent seems to be limited. You're only at Transcendent LV1 now. However, my master broke through the shackles of Transcendent LV9 3 years ago and successfully entered the Celestial Being Realm. As he said this, the black-clothed man showed a very proud expression. He looked at Grandmaster Bayun with a hint of mockery and disdain. As for whether his words would anger Grandmaster Bayun, he didn't seem to care at all, because he was stronger than Grandmaster Bayun, and his master was stronger. What? He actually entered the Celestial Being Realm? Grandmaster Bayun's body shook violently. His face was extremely pale. Obviously, he couldn't accept this situation. Yes, after my master entered the Celestial Being Realm, he successfully became an elder of Yuehua school. Now, he has a very powerful force in Yuehua school. The black-clothed man seemed to think that this wasn't enough, so he continued. Grandmaster Bayun's face became even uglier. He knew very well what being an elder of Yuehua school meant. He also knew what being in the Celestial Being Realm meant. Even if his disciples entered Yuehua school, as long as they were targeted by this man, they would be in endless trouble. Now, Martial Uncle Bayun, you understand my painstaking efforts. Let the 2 of them go with me. My master can forget about the past grudges and spare your other disciples. The black-clothed man laughed. Humph! I don't believe Yuehua school can let him do whatever he wants. Grandmaster Bayun snorted coldly. He seemed to have recovered some of his confidence. He couldn't, but his disciples were geniuses. They are really stubborn. Since I can't get them, I'll destroy them now. Otherwise, it will be difficult to deal with them after they enter the school. It was a very simple reason. If Ming Tian and Ling Xiao were not disciples of Yuehua School, he could kill them. But once the two of them joined Yuehua School, it would be very troublesome. It might even involve the internal struggle of the sect, which was very complicated. Therefore, the black-clothed man wanted to kill Ling Xiao and Ming Tian. Now was the best opportunity. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure suddenly approached Ling Xiao rapidly, and he was already prepared to kill him. However, the black-clothed man didn't expect that. A martial master at the late stage of the 8th level of the martial vein had sensed the danger before he moved and quickly avoided it. Huh! He let out a cry of surprise. When he was about to continue chasing, Grandmaster Baiyun had already pounced on him. If you want to kill them, you have to get through me first. Vital essence flowed in Grandmaster Baiyun's palms. He had exerted nearly 100% of his strength, trying to kill the black-clothed man on the spot with one blow. That's strange. Martial uncle, didn't you want to kill this guy just now? Facing Grandmaster Baiyun's full blow, the black-clothed man smiled and said. Then he casually raised his hand. A gloomy aura suddenly burst out and collided with Grandmaster Baiyun's blow. Boom! The terrifying aftershock spread out like an explosion. It actually shattered a pavilion on the life and death cliff. The ground was also directly flattened by the residual force. Fortunately, the others knew the terrifying power of the battle between transcendent realm warriors, so they hurriedly moved far away. Otherwise, they would definitely be smashed by the terrifying force. Swoosh! 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 Grandmaster Baiyun didn't stop after his attack failed. He continued to attack continuously. His body was suspended in midair, which was completely different from the warriors below the transcendent realm. Generally, warriors below the transcendent realm could stay in midair for a while. However, as long as a transcendent warrior had enough vital essence, it wasn't a problem for them to stay in midair for 15 minutes. Of course, there were also special cases. That was the kind of weirdo like Ling Xiao. However, he was a one-in-a-million monster after all. He couldn't be judged by common sense. At this moment, the two transcendent experts were continuously fighting in midair. The ground exploded from time to time. The entire life and death cliff was almost turned into a world of gravel and powder. A perfectly fine mountain was gradually flattened just like that. Terrifying. Ling Xiao had been maintaining the soul entrancing state. His soul power was very powerful now. Even if he maintained the soul entrancing state, he could still maintain it. It was just that the consumption was relatively large. However, the situation was critical now. He couldn't care less. Under the state of soul imprint, only he was able to clearly see the situation of the battle. Not good. Chapter 233. Although Ling Xiao did not like Elder Baiyun, he had benefited from Elder Baiyun. Naturally, he did not want the old man to be defeated. Lost for the other black-clothed man, he disliked him the most. He was arrogant and rude, wanting to cripple someone easily. Did he think that the world belonged to him? Bang! Puff! A mouthful of blood spurted out. Elder Baiyun's figure fell to the ground and fell heavily on the rock. I'm giving you face by calling you martial uncle. Don't be so shameless. On the other side, the black-clothed man appeared from the dust. Other than his clothes being slightly torn, there were no other injuries on his body. Obviously, he had the upper hand in this battle. He had completely crushed Elder Baiyun. Elder Baiyun lay there, his face as white as a sheet. He was almost completely drained of blood, and his aura had become much weaker. At this moment, even a martial vein level 8 martial master would be able to kill him easily. This scene shattered Elder Baiyun's legendary status in the hearts of the disciples. Although the Beast King Palace's disciple had injured Baiyun with a single punch, not many people knew about it because it had happened too suddenly. Therefore, the impact was not that great. However, it was different this time. The 11 disciples clearly saw that Elder Baiyun was severely injured. Who would have thought that Elder Baiyun, who was regarded as a martial arts legend, would be defeated so easily by a young martial artist who was not even 30 years old? Moreover, he was defeated so quickly and easily. Some people already had strange thoughts in their hearts. Even Ming Tian, who had been very confident and calm, was in a daze. His mind was in a mess. However, Elder Baiyun was really pitiful. He was more biased towards the disciples of the Heavenly Endurance Academy, especially Ming Tian. However, when it came to the end, no one went over to help him. The disciples of the latent dragon camp did not have a good impression of this old man. In the end, this old man was too biased. He only had himself to blame for falling into such a situation. Ha 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 ha, Martial Uncle, you're still such a failure. You're dying and no one is willing to help you. The black-clothed man laughed. You. Grandmaster Baiyun was filled with sorrow, but he couldn't say anything. He could understand why the people from the latent dragon camp treated him like this. After all, he was the one who did things unfairly. However, Ming Tian didn't seem to care at all, which was what made him feel the most uncomfortable. Don't worry, Martial Uncle. I won't kill you. It's taboo to kill fellow disciples. But the black-robed man suddenly laughed evilly, and his body instantly appeared beside Ming Tian. Intentionally or unintentionally, he glanced at Zhuo Lung's corpse on the ground and muttered to himself, I originally wanted Ming Tian and Zhuo Lung, but I didn't expect that kid called Ling Xiao to be so powerful. Then he looked at Ming Tian and said with a smile, Did you see that? When I met you in private before, I told you that your master is really terrible. What are you trying to do? Ming Tian came back to his senses. He didn't have Ling Xiao's terrifying prediction skills and movement skills, so he knew that it was impossible for him to escape the black-clothed man's pursuit. Don't worry, I won't kill you. It would be too much of a pity to kill you. It's really rare to have potential that exceeds 7 stars. How about it? Have you thought it through and decided to come with me? The black-clothed man asked with a smile. Ming Tian didn't refuse immediately. Instead, he fell into silence. Boy, you should know that a good bird chooses a good tree to nest in. I'm sure that old man Baiyun has told you that the so-called 9th layer martial vein is just the foundation of martial arts cultivation. It's called the martial vein realm in the sect. The black-clothed man continued. After opening 9 martial veins, you can smoothly enter the transcendent realm. It's the beginning of real martial arts cultivation, and this stage is also called the transcendent realm. Above the 9th layer martial vein realm is the 9th layer transcendent realm. After that, you can be considered a small achievement and advance to the heaven realm. The black-clothed man's words were very calm. However, Ling Xiao and the others were very shocked when they heard it. Ling Xiao thought that the transcendent realm was the strongest realm. He didn't expect that there was the heaven realm above the transcendent realm. What kind of realm was that? I know this. Ming Tian said, Honored Master did say that the martial vein realm is just to open up one's martial veins and build the foundation. It's not even considered a real martial artist. The transcendent realm is the beginning of real martial arts, transcending the shackles of the mortal world. You know it very well. Then you should understand that although you are now at the late stage of the 9th layer martial vein realm, in the end, you are just a low-level disciple who hasn't even reached the peak of the basic realm. When you enter the sect, you won't even be at the bottom because your master, Old Man Baiyun, is at the bottom. The black-clothed man mocked. If you follow your master, your greatest achievement in life will be to go from a low-level disciple to a low-level disciple. Do you really want to do that? Ling Xiao could tell that the black-clothed man was trying to persuade Ming Tian to follow him. However, this kind of temptation was really quite big. Anyway, he had been expelled from the sect by Baiyun. If the black-clothed man was really willing to take him away, he didn't care. It could be seen from today's situation. Without power, You didn't even have the least bit of dignity. You didn't even have the right to choose the way to die. If the black-clothed man really wanted to kill someone today, among those present, only Ling Xiao would be able to escape. Everyone else would have to die. This was power. Terrifying power. Not to mention the people here. Even if the black-clothed man wanted to destroy Sky Cloud City, it would only take a moment. Thinking about this fact made one feel helpless, but this was the reality. Old man Baiyin, you're not denying my words, right? You can't even win me. How can you win my master? The black-clothed man looked at Master Baiyin, who was struggling at death's door, and said, You can't possibly destroy this genius's future just because of your own ideas, right? Master Baiyin didn't say a word. Reality forced him to not utter a single word. He didn't have the confidence to say anything now. Don't make things difficult for my master. Just tell me what you want. Ming Tian said loudly, You still don't understand? Follow me back to Yuehua School. My master can let you become his official disciple directly. Your status will be much higher than ordinary outer disciples, and you'll be able to enter the inner door in the shortest time. The black-clothed man said, Old man Baiyin is not even comparable to an ant in front of my master. What future can you have by following him? When he said that, the black-clothed man's eyes were filled with crazed worship. Heaven realm. That was the realm above the transcendent realm. And the transcendent realm required one to pass through the 9th level before they could be promoted to this realm. Cultivating at the martial vein level 9 was already tough enough. The difficulty of the transcendent realm level 9 was imaginable. Reaching the heaven realm, in the black-clothed man's eyes, was simply a godlike existence. Ming Tian's face obviously showed signs of wavering. He was considering the black-clothed man's suggestion. Opportunity knocks, but once. I'm only giving you a quarter of an hour to consider. If you miss it, you can forget about the future forever. The black-clothed man said indifferently, My master, the flame deity, has a bad temper. He specifically asked me to take in a disciple. If I don't succeed, he... Chapter 234. Naruto say yes. La, Master Baiyin suddenly spoke. Oh, a wise man submits to circumstances. Not bad, not bad. You haven't lived in vain for so many years. The man in black laughed happily. Hearing Master Baiyun's words, the only shackle in Naruto's heart was removed. He had followed Master Baiyin because he wanted to use him as a stepping stone to enter the 12 sects. This was something that was taught to him by the strongest ninja from the shinobi clan. He hesitated and didn't dare to say yes because he was afraid that Master Baiyin would be angry, which would be detrimental to the ninja clan and him. Although the man in black said that Master Baiyin was inferior to an ant, he was a transcendent after all. It would be easy for him to kill him. I'm willing to be the flame deity's disciple. Naruto knelt down and said without hesitation, Ha ha ha, good. Very good. You're really smart. The man in black laughed and said, Don't worry. You've made the most important choice in your life. Once you enter the Yuehua sect with your potential, you'll be able to step into a more colorful world and even come into contact with the top geniuses of the other continents. You will become a martial arts legend in your area. The man in black's words were for Naruto and also for Ling Xiao. It wasn't enough to take Naruto back. He also wanted to take Ling Xiao back. He knew very well that what these young martial artists were looking forward to the most was to step into a more colorful world, to be able to come into contact with more and better martial arts, to be able to see what the world was like with their own eyes. In this sense, he succeeded. Ling Xiao was indeed tempted. If he became the flame deity's disciple, he wouldn't have to go to the outer sect to suffer. He could directly receive guidance from the flame deity. He would probably become an inner sect disciple soon. Then his cultivation would improve rapidly. It was absolutely possible for him to reach the celestial realm. In fact, from the moment he saw the woman in blue, he was full of curiosity about this world. How about that kid? Naruto said yes. What about you? What's your choice? The man in black looked at Ling Xiao and asked, Hehe, senior from Yuehua School. Your offer is too tempting. In addition, Master Baiyun has already expelled me from his school. Logically speaking, it shouldn't be a problem for me to follow you and join the Flame Deity School. Ling Xiao smiled and said, But I don't believe it will be so simple. Although he was tempted by the black-clothed man's words, his intuition told him that things were not as good as they were described. Ha ha ha, smart, you're really smart. I'm starting to like you. The black-clothed man laughed and said, Although your aptitude is not good, but with this intelligence it would be good for you to follow by Master's side in the future. Ha ha, I don't have that ability. Senior, you should do it. I can see that you admire the flame deity a lot. Ling Xiao chuckled. Brat, you're really bold. Do you think I can't kill you? The black-clothed man frowned. What was that? Since he said it himself, he naturally understood that it was an insult. You really can't kill me. Ling Xiao was confident that as long as he didn't do anything stupid, the black-clothed man wouldn't be able to kill him. Hee, bold but careful. Moreover, you're both intelligent and courageous. Forget it. I won't bother with these trivial matters with you. You're right. If you want to join Empyrean Demon Flame sect, you need to prove your loyalty. The black-clothed man chuckled. What kind of proof? Ling Xiao asked. Cut off something from Old Man Baiyun's body, such as his ears, nose, or eyes. The black-clothed man said calmly, I know you have a deep relationship with him, so I won't let you kill him to avoid making things difficult for you. Hearing this, Ling Xiao could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. Wasn't this person a little too vicious? Although he really wanted to join Yuehua School and didn't like Old Man Baiyun, he really couldn't do such a thing. Hey Suwa, you've gone too far. Master Baiyun couldn't help but curse. So what if I've gone too far? What can you do to me? Hey Suwa sneered. I'm sorry. Although I don't like this old man, I don't have an irreconcilable hatred with him. Moreover, he saved my life before. I really can't do it. It seems that I really have no fate with the flame deity. Ling Xiao shrugged and gave up. Ming Tian, what about you? He Sua looked at Ming Tian coldly and said, You should know that this proof is necessary. After all, you're Old Man Baiyun's disciples. If you pretend to surrender, wouldn't Master be at a disadvantage? Ming Tian trembled and looked at Master Baiyun. At this moment, Master Baiyun was really desperate. If Ming Tian wanted to become the flame deity's disciple, he could still understand. But now he really couldn't understand. He spent all his energy on cultivating Ming Tian and Zuolong, and even offended Ling Xiao and the others because of this. But in the end, this disciple that he wholeheartedly cultivated actually wanted to harm him. I'm sorry, Master. I'll borrow your ear. When this disciple's cultivation is successful, I'll repay you. Ming Tian walked towards Master Baiyun. Bastard! You bastard! Master Baiyun was so angry that he vomited blood. He was now seriously injured. If Ming Tian wanted to kill him, he could do it, let alone take his ear. Ha ha ha, well done, well done. A man with a small appetite is not a man without poison. You're a man who can achieve great things. I believe that soon you'll be proud of your choice. He Sua laughed happily. Ah, I can't take it anymore. Ming Tian, you bastard. You're not allowed to hurt Master. The first one to rush out and try to protect Master Baiyun was Shirley. Unfortunately, before he could take a step forward, he was already sent flying. He Sua stood there without moving. Just the true yuan that spread out from his body was enough to seriously injure Shirley until he fainted. To be honest, if it wasn't for He Sua standing there, even the disciples of Heavenly Enduring Academy would despise Ming Tian's actions. They would also go up and stop him. However, He Sua stood there and made it clear that he would attack anyone who dared to stop Ming Tian. They, including the rest of the latent dragon camp, were powerless to stop him. Yuling, go save Shirley. Leave that old man to me. Ling Xiao couldn't stand it anymore. He didn't like old man Baiyun and even felt disgusted. However, if he watched Ming Tian, a traitor who betrayed his master, cut off old man Baiyun's ear, he, Ling Xiao, would feel uneasy for the rest of his life. This would become his inner demon. Therefore, he transmitted his voice to Dai Yuling to save Shirley while he looked for an opportunity to save old man Baiyun. It could be considered repaying the old man for saving his life. Ming Tian was truly a disappointment. Old man Baiyun had invested almost all of his love into him, including personal guidance and a large amount of resources. However, in the end, this guy didn't have the slightest bit of gratitude. He even suspected that this guy's heart was black. If he, Ling Xiao, encountered such a situation, his heart would probably bleed. He might only have one chance to save old man Baiyun. According to the calculations of his mountain river martial spirit, the success rate was only about 60%. Moreover, this process required the combination of the blood shadow martial spirit, cloud dragon divine travel, martial spirit doppelganger, and mountain river martial spirit world. 60% is enough. Chapter 235. Just as Ming Tian approached Master Baiyun, Ling Xiao moved. Novels, La at the same time, He Suo also moved. He Suo had been keeping an eye on Ling Xiao. His master, the flame deity, had said that if he couldn't have it, then he would destroy it. Since Ling Xiao refused to go with him, then he could only kill him to prevent future troubles. However, in the next moment, he lost track of Ling Xiao. Even for a transcendent warrior, it was very difficult to find a person who had lost his aura and figure. At this moment, he didn't expect this at all. The moment of pause gave Ling Xiao the perfect opportunity to save Master Baiyun. If you dare to leave, I'll kill everyone here. He Suo couldn't see Ling Xiao and couldn't sense Ling Xiao's existence, but he could use the others as hostages. To him, as long as they weren't from the Yuehua school, he wouldn't hesitate to kill them. Ling Xiao didn't dare to leave just like that. Suddenly, a ruthless look flashed in his eyes. Son of AB****, you forced me to do this. In an instant, he communicated with Master Baiyun and discussed something. Then he knocked Master Baiyun unconscious and threw him into the mountain river world. At this moment, Master Baiyun's body was very weak, so he could do this. Otherwise, it would be too difficult for him to knock out a transcendent warrior. The reason why he knocked him out was to prevent the secret of the mountain river world from being exposed. Don't do it. I'll show myself. Ling Xiao's voice sounded in the void, but it was impossible to tell where he was. It was really difficult for He Suo to determine Ling Xiao's location with his voice. You better hurry up or I'll do it. He Suo didn't care about the lives of the others. He cared about Ling Xiao the most. This kid was too cunning. If he left him alone, he would definitely become a big problem in the future. Therefore, he had to get rid of him. Okay, I'm out. Ling Xiao appeared. In that instant, He Suo pounced forward, absolutely not giving Ling Xiao a chance to escape. However, when he rushed over, he saw a black shadow being thrown at him. He thought it was a hidden weapon, so he casually blocked it. He didn't care at all. However, it was this block that caused great trouble. Boom! The terrifying explosion directly blasted He Suo's arm and half of his body into a bloody mess. A deep crater was blasted into the ground, and a thick, burnt smell wafted out. Oh my, it's so powerful! Ling Xiao couldn't help but stick out his tongue. He suddenly thought of the sky-piercing strike that he had snatched from the Blue Eyes tribe. As long as there were enough low-grade spirit stones in this thing, it would be able to kill a 7th-level martial master. At this point, it wasn't of much use to him. Originally, he planned to leave this item in the Divine Sword Sect after returning to the sect. But today, under He Suo's aggressiveness, he thought of something. When he was reading a book in the martial arts hall, the book recorded an accident during the experiment of the sky-piercing strike. It said that someone had put a large number of high-grade spirit stones in it, and as a result, the sky-piercing strike exploded, killing the experimenter. That person was a martial master at the peak of the 9th level martial vein, although he didn't know if this kind of explosion would be effective against transcendence. Ling Xiao felt that he could only give it a shot. His current strength was far from enough to deal with transcendence, so he could only rely on this kind of evil method. And a large number of high-grade spirit stones were obtained from Master Baiyun. He originally thought that after this thing exploded, it would only be able to injure He Sua a little. However, he didn't expect the power to be so fierce. He Sua looked like he had been severely injured, and his situation might not be much better than Master Baiyun's. Ah! The calmness from before was all gone. He Sua burst into a tragic cry, like a pig that had been shaved. Ling Xiao, you're courting death. At this time, Ming Tian had completely decided to submit to the flame deity. Therefore, when he saw this situation, the first thing that came to his mind was to attack Ling Xiao. Let me do it! Half of He Sua's body was badly mutilated, but after all, he had suffered external injuries and not internal injuries. Therefore, if he went all out, killing Ling Xiao was absolutely not a problem. At this time, he was so angry that he couldn't care about anything else. As an unrelated person, I advise you to go back and treat your injuries as soon as possible. Otherwise, even if you're an extraordinary warrior, your body will be crippled. Suddenly, a cold voice rang out. Then, an unfamiliar figure appeared at the scene. She was wearing a long purple dress and a veil wrapped around her face. Her appearance couldn't be seen clearly, but her eyes were very clear and bright. Soul Tribe! He Sua, who was about to rush out, stopped. He turned back and shouted at Ming Tian, "Take me away. Let's go back to Yuehua School." Although Ming Tian didn't know who this purple-dressed woman was, if He Sua was so afraid of her, he definitely couldn't afford to provoke her. Therefore, he hurriedly nodded, supported He Sua, and fled into the distance. Ling Xiao, He Sua, will definitely take revenge for what happened today. It doesn't matter if you bring Yuehua School or not. I will kill you. By the way, tell old man Baiyun that he can forget about returning to the sect for the rest of his life. It's enough for him to be an abandoned piece of trash. Also, my master will take good care of his daughter. Ha ha ha. The person had already disappeared, but He Sua's voice remained. Everyone could understand the first part of the sentence. He Sua was an extraordinary warrior who was more powerful than Master Baiyun. In the end, he was seriously injured by Ling Xiao here. If he didn't take revenge, it would probably become a thorn in his heart forever. However, everyone couldn't quite understand the second part of the sentence. However, if they thought about it carefully, they could think of something. It was likely that He Sua's master, the flame deity, really had a deep hatred for Master Baiyun. This was probably an irreconcilable hatred. Otherwise, why would he be so heartless? However, Ling Xiao was very clear about what had happened. He had seen Master Baiyun's diary in the inheritance hall, although the diary had been sealed using a special method. However, his mountain river martial soul had easily opened the seal. The contents of the diary were actually very simple. Master Baiyun and the flame deity were actually cousins. Master Baiyun's talent had always been stronger than the flame deity's since he was young until he entered Yuehua School. This was because Master Baiyun had a wisdom bone in his body. It was said that as long as he had this wisdom bone, his potential would be much stronger than ordinary warriors. However, on the night before the two of them entered Yuehua School, Master Baiyun was knocked unconscious. His head was cut open and the wisdom bone was removed. It was then implanted into the flame deity's body. Although their family later found out about this, what was done could not be undone. In addition, Master Baiyun's parents didn't have a high status, so no one cared about this matter. They only treated Master Baiyun's injuries and allowed him to continue studying at Yuehua School. However, the flame deity didn't pity Master Bayun because of this. Instead, his temperament changed drastically. He wanted nothing more than to trample Master Bayun under his feet. Master Bayun's tragedy was far from over. Later, Master Bayun married a wife at Yuehua School and gave birth to a daughter. However, on the night his wife gave birth, Master Bayun encountered an even more terrifying nightmare. Chapter 236. To this day, Master Bayun still didn't know that his wife had been killed by the flame deity, and his daughter had been snatched away by the flame deity. The reason why Ling Xiao hated Old Man Bayun but didn't hate this person was probably because of this tragic experience. This person was too pitiful. He had worked so hard to raise such an outstanding disciple, a top-notch genius. He wanted to use this opportunity to return to Yuehua School one day. After all, although he was still an outer sect disciple, he was basically exiled. If he didn't make any special contributions, he wouldn't be able to return to the sect. But in the end, it was all in vain. This disciple that he had spent so much effort on was easily snatched away by the other party. Not only that, but this disciple also wanted to cut off his ear as a sign of loyalty. Sigh, how could Ling Xiao not sympathize with such a pitiful person? After all, no matter what, other than being biased, this old man had not done anything too overboard to him. The flame deity was 1,000 times more disgusting than Old Man Bayun. Not only did he snatch someone else's wisdom bone, but he also trampled on someone else's dignity. He clearly wanted to play Old Man Bayun to death. It would be fine if there was a deep hatred between them, but the problem was that not only did Master Bayun not do anything wrong to the flame deity, but he was also very loyal to the flame deity before he joined Yuehua School. Mother *her, now even I want to stand up for this Old Man Bayun. To be honest, he was only Master Bayun's disciple and didn't have any feelings for him. In addition, Master Bayun was biased, so he was a little disgusted by this old man. However, when he thought about the diary he had read, He Sua's words, and what he had done today, he had an extremely strong urge to do something. If there was a chance, he had to do something for this pitiful old man. And he probably had to do something now. Making a feud with He Sua was making a feud with the flame deity. Whether he admitted it or not, the flame deity would treat him as Master Bayun's disciple. It would be impossible for him to completely cut ties with Old Man Bayun in this life. So in fact, standing up for Old Man Bayun was also for his future. Thank you, Senior. Ling Xiao looked at the purple-dressed woman and cupped his hands. Haha, Senior. I'm not much older than you. The woman smiled, then waved her hand and said, He Sua's not to mention. Even if I didn't arrive just now, with your movement technique, you might have exhausted him to death. You're flattering me. Since you're not much older than me, I'll call you Senior. You're really familiar with people. Forget it. I'm here today to take Yi Shui away. You have a good relationship with her, so you should help me persuade her. The woman in purple woman. You seniors, sister seniors. Ling Xiao was stunned for a moment and said, Sister, I don't seem to understand. Calm. UTS, right? The purple-dressed woman smiled and said, This time, elder sister, I came to take Yi Shui away for her own good. For her own good? Yes. She's from the soul race. She's not qualified to enter the 12 sects. You humans, ninjas, blue eyes, and barbarians were one family 100,000 years ago. But our soul race isn't. The purple-dressed woman continued, Think about it. You can enter the sects to improve your strength. What about her? That's right. But, Senior, you have to make me believe that you won't harm Senior Sister Senior, right? Ling Xiao frowned. That's simple. Yi Shui, come over and take a look as well. Back then, something happened to the soul race. You were sent to Tianfeng City to be fostered. It was originally to seek refuge. Now that everything is over, it's time for you to return and inherit the family business. As the purple-dressed woman spoke, she took out a mirror. At this moment, Ling Yishua walked over. She and Ling Xiao looked into the mirror together. An image appeared in the mirror. This is a tool that only our soul race can create. It can seal memories inside and play them. The purple-dressed woman explained. From the image in the mirror, it could be seen that Ling Yixue's family had encountered a disaster. She was sent away to protect Ling Yixue. Now that her family had returned to normal, she naturally should go back. Is this all true? Ling Xiao still didn't dare to relax. It's true. It's all true. After Ling Yixue saw the entire image, her face was already covered in tears. These images completely unlocked the memories in her mind. It turned out that the powerful soul power in her body didn't belong to anyone else but her father. Since Ling Yixue said it was true, Ling Xiao didn't need to say anything. Senior sister, Yixue didn't have much lifespan because she forcefully increased her cultivation. I can see that. But it doesn't matter. What your 12 sects have, our soul race has. What your 12 sects don't have, our soul race has. It's very easy to let Yixue advance to the transcendent realm in a short period of time. The purple-dressed woman smiled. Then I'm relieved. Senior sister Yixue, although I miss you, it's clear that it's better for you to go back with this sister. Ling Xiao looked at Ling Yixue and said, Junior brother, why don't you come with me to the soul race? You've offended Heisua and the flame deity. I'm afraid you won't be able to stay in the Yuehua school anymore. Ling Yixue said, Senior sister, you should know very well that the soul race's martial arts are very different from the human race's martial arts. I'll definitely go to the soul race, but not now. Ling Xiao said with a smile. As for Heisua and the flame deity, they're just stronger enemies. I've long been used to this kind of challenge. It's nothing. All right then. You must stay alive. Ling Yixue didn't speak much and didn't know how to say anything that moved her heart. Her thoughts were very simple. Ling Xiao was getting stronger and stronger. He had already surpassed her by a lot. If this continued, she was afraid that she would never be able to catch up to Ling Xiao. She wouldn't even have the qualifications to protect Ling Xiao. Therefore, she wanted to return to the soul race and become stronger. Of course, senior sister, you have to become stronger too. Who knows? I might need your protection when I go to the soul race in the future. Ling Xiao really couldn't bear to part with her, but he didn't show any reluctance on his face. This was because he knew very well what was best for Ling Yixue. Little brother, we'll meet again someday. The purple-dressed woman grabbed Ling Yixue's shoulder and instantly disappeared into the distance. Her speed was clearly faster than Heisua's. No wonder Heisua was so afraid of her. Ling Xiao, where's Master? At this moment, someone finally dared to ask about Master Bai Yun's whereabouts. Don't worry. I've hidden Master. I'm going to bring him back now. Ling Xiao concealed his figure and aura again. When he appeared again, Master Bai Yun was already on his back. At this moment, Master Bai Yun's aura was stable, and he was gradually recovering. It seemed like the mountain river realm was really a treasure land. It actually had the effect of healing injuries. Although this passive recovery was still relatively slow, at least old man Bai Yun wouldn't die. Dai Yuling hurried over and used her medical skills to treat Master Bai Yun. Moments later, Master Bai Yun woke up. Although he was no longer in danger, his eyes were filled with darkness and despair. Chapter 237. Master, why are you still talking about that bastard? Heisua was injured by Ling Zhao's void-piercing strike. Coupled with the appearance of the soul race experts, those two fellows fled in a sorry state. Shi Lei also woke up at this time. This guy had a straightforward personality, but he was definitely a righteous and loyal young man. In his eyes, Ming Tian's actions were worse than a bastard's. Master Bai Yun's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, then returned to its previous gloominess. Ling Xiao, I don't have much to say. In short, I was blind. I only cared about talent and forgot about the most basic martial arts of a martial artist. I'm sorry for what I did to you. If you're willing, one of the 3 spots will definitely be yours." Although Master Bai Yun was still alive, his heart was completely dead. Therefore, there was no need for him to be courteous with Ling Xiao. These words were purely from the bottom of his heart. "Sai, after offending He Suo, I can only accept this biased master of yours." Ling Xiao sighed. The atmosphere was slightly less oppressive because of his words. Master Bai Yun's mood seemed to have improved a little, but that despair was difficult to eliminate in a short period of time. "Master, I think we should let everyone fight for the 3 spots. Otherwise, there will definitely be people who won't be convinced." Fei Yu suddenly said, "What's there to be convinced about? Ling Xiao killed Zuolong. Which one of you can do it? If it wasn't for him, even Master's ears would have been cut off by that bastard Ming Tian. You're still not convinced?" Shirley roared. "Then we can fight for the remaining 2 spots, right?" Fei Yu also knew that no matter if it was Ling Xiao's strength or contributions, there was no need to doubt. There was no way to fight with him. "Didn't you give 1 spot to an outsider?" Zhu Hua asked. "I won't give it up now because it's meaningless." Master Bai Yun explained. "I told you before that the 3rd spot was given to someone else. Now, I can tell you who it was given to. It's the disciple of one of my senior brothers. The reason why I gave it to him was because I was afraid that you would be suppressed by the demonic flames in the Yuehua school. My senior brother is a transcendent stage 8 expert, so he should be able to protect you. However, as you all know now, Mo Yin is already a sky human realm expert. That senior brother of mine would definitely not dare offend him. Thus, this spot is now empty. Aside from Ling Xiao, everyone else should prepare to fight for it. Master, do you think the flame deity will make things difficult for us after we enter Yuehua school?" Dai Yuling asked. "With his personality, he definitely will. However, the few of you don't have much potential. That person is very conceited. As long as you don't perform well enough, he won't bother with you. Instead, keeping you around will make him feel superior," Grandmaster Bai Yun explained. From his words, one could tell how desperate Grandmaster Bai Yun was. He didn't believe that any of his remaining disciples would be able to make a name for themselves in Yuehua school. Even entering Yuehua school wouldn't be easy. Perhaps Ling Xiao could succeed. After all, that kid was very cunning and intelligent. However, if they wanted to perform well enough to attract the flame deity's attention, it would be impossible. Therefore, Grandmaster Bai Yun could only say that he had done his best and left the rest to fate. He would just treat it as a little compensation for his disciples after going through this disaster. As for his disciples, they were also considering the choice they would face next. Even if they were recommended to enter Yuehua school, would it really be a good thing? What they would face in the future might be suppression and difficulties from the flame deity and his henchmen. Although it might not be too excessive, they definitely wouldn't be able to cultivate normally like the other disciples. This path of cultivation would be full of thorns, and it would be very difficult. It could be said to be hell mode. In Heavenly Ninja Academy, after careful consideration, the 5 people chose to leave. They didn't want to be tied to this broken warship by Grandmaster Bai Yun. As long as they returned to the Ninja Academy, they would have other opportunities to join other sections. This path was too unwise for them. Well, it seems like there's no competition now. Ling Xiao already has a spot. Ling Yishua left, and I'm from the Elephant Clan. I'm not qualified to enter the 12 sects. I'll probably have to leave soon. The only ones left are Dai Yuling and Cold Plum. Shirley smiled and said, "You two are really lucky. However, you have to think carefully about the difficulties you'll have to go through. If you really don't want to go, come with me to the Elephant Clan. I still have some power there. I can guarantee that you'll get enough cultivation resources, but it might not be as good as the 12 sects. Thank you for your kindness, Brother Shur. I really want to see how far I can go on this path of cultivation under the suppression of the other party. Anyway, I can't let that bastard Naruto be so proud. Although Dai Yuling was a girl, she was very decisive and never hesitant. I'll go wherever young master goes. Cold Plum's answer was even simpler. Ling Xiao smiled and said, Of course I'll go to the Yuehua school. Otherwise, He Suo and the flame deity will be disappointed. He didn't have the slightest fear in his heart. Instead, he was filled with a strong fighting spirit. This was because he realized that the greater the pressure and the more difficulties there were, the more the potential of the mountain river martial soul would be stimulated. With so many benefits, how could he give it up? Grandmaster Baiyun saw the expressions of these disciples, and a smile finally appeared on his face. However, what followed was a helpless sigh. He was very clear about the hot-bloodedness and impulsiveness of young people. However, as an experienced person, he was very clear that such a choice wasn't optimistic or smart. The reason why he didn't say it was because he didn't want to dampen the enthusiasm of his disciples. Hopefully a miracle would happen. All right, since the quota has been decided, the three of you can go and rest first. Ling Xiao, you stay for a while. I have something to tell you. Perhaps because of the setback, Grandmaster Baiyun was more amiable than before. It was as if he was about to say his last words. Ling Xiao nodded and said yes. After Shirley and the others left, Grandmaster Baiyun looked at Ling Xiao and said, Have you read the diary in the technique hall? Ling Xiao nodded a little awkwardly and said, Yes. Since you've read it, you should know about my past. Grandmaster Baiyun sighed and said, To be honest, I nurtured Mingtian and Zuolong with impure intentions. I hoped that they could surpass the flame deity and avenge me. Understandable. Ling Xiao didn't think much of it. It was right and proper for a disciple to avenge his master. If Master Baiyun treated him well enough, like how he treated Mingtian and Zuolong, he would definitely not shirk his responsibility. Mo Yen took away my wisdom bone and is suspected of killing my wife and daughter. This hatred is absolutely irreconcilable. Grandmaster Baiyun smiled helplessly and said, Unfortunately, revenge is an extravagant hope. Everything is over. Master, you still don't know that your daughter is not dead, right? Ling Xiao was considering whether to tell Grandmaster Baiyun about this. After all, it would be like rubbing salt on Grandmaster Baiyun's wound. However, after some consideration, he decided to tell him because he realized that Grandmaster Baiyun had suicidal tendencies. Once a person's heart was dead, it was very likely that he would commit suicide. Although telling him this would make Grandmaster Baiyun suffer more, it might save his life. Not dead? Who told you? Grandmaster Baiyun asked in surprise. He Suo. Chapter 238. Ling Xiao's words made Master Baiyun's originally gloomy eyes finally brighten up. Lahi's daughter was not dead yet. This might be his last hope to live. Ling Xiao. Master Baiyun was silent for a long time. Suddenly he pressed Ling Xiao's shoulder with both hands and said, Help me. Help me save my daughter. I'm willing to exchange everything for it. There was a hint of desperation in his voice. He couldn't do it. He would never be able to get his wisdom bone back, let alone save his daughter. Because his aptitude had reached its limit, his heart was not as strong as before. He needed a younger, more talented, and smarter person to help him. Master, my potential isn't that high. I might not even be able to defeat Mingtian, let alone heavenly venerate Demon Flame. Ling Xiao said lightly, No, even if it's only a slim chance, I'm willing to gamble. My daughter must not fall into the hands of that beast. Absolutely not. Master Baiyun certainly knew that Ling Xiao's potential was not as good as Mingtian's. He did not expect this matter to succeed. But in his opinion, Ling Xiao was a very cunning person. He had already created many unbelievable miracles. Maybe there was still a chance. Ling Xiao listened to Master Baiyun's words and laughed in his heart. A slim chance? Did this mean that there was not even a 10% chance? Master, you may not be underestimating me, Ling Xiao. Not to mention that my potential is not inferior to his. Even if I'm really less than 5 stars like you think, killing him is still more than a slim chance. As for the flame deity, the celestial realm did sound very scary, and people did not dare to look up. But from the first level of the martial vein to the late stage of the 8th level, Ling Xiao had experienced too many things. He believed that he would be able to advance to the celestial realm sooner or later. The flame deity, what did he have to fear? Did you cultivate the heavenly dragon golden body? Master Bai Yun suddenly asked. Ling Xiao knew that this matter could not be hidden from this master, so he did not lie. Instead, he nodded and said, "Yes, I just broke through to the 3rd level." "You have already cultivated to the 3rd level. The heavenly dragon golden body is only at the 6th level. You really surprised me." Master Bai Yun exclaimed. "Master, you flatter me." No. I'm not exaggerating. You have to know that the heavenly dragon golden body exists in the Yuehua sect as well. However, none of the disciples managed to cultivate it to level 3 and above. Master Bai Yun shook his head and said, "Only by cultivating the heavenly dragon golden body to the 6th level can you obtain the Dragon Emperor's protective body art, which is even stronger than the other 2. Until now, no one in the Yuehua sect had ever succeeded in cultivating this set of defensive martial arts, and you may be the first." At this point, even Master Bai Yun's face had a touch of ecstasy. Although he had never seen the Dragon Emperor's protective armor, he knew very well how terrifying this defensive martial art was. Once successfully cultivated, even a celestial realm expert would not be able to do anything to Ling Xiao. Ling Xiao was shocked. He thought that the heavenly dragon golden body was already a high-level martial art among the master-level martial arts. He did not expect that there was a stronger martial art in the same series. Could it be that the Dragon Emperor's protective armor was the final form of this defensive martial art? But what level of martial art would it be? Could it be that there was a more powerful secret martial art above the master level? Of course, if you want to get the Dragon Emperor's protective armor, you must become one of the best among the inner disciples of Yuehua School. Otherwise, you won't have the chance to learn this martial art. That shouldn't be a problem. Ling Xiao shrugged and said, "If Mingtian can become an inner disciple of Yuehua School, I will only be stronger than him." "Where did you get such confidence?" Master Bai Yun was very puzzled. After a moment of silence, Ling Xiao said, "Master, has your 7-star flower grown?" He had thought about it. Before entering Yuehua School, he must make Master Bai Yun have expectations of him. Then Master Bai Yun would focus on him like how he treated Mingtian. In this way, his improvement should be faster. The best way to do this was to let Master Bai Yun see his true potential. Master Bai Yun was stunned for a moment. He nodded and said, "It has grown into 7 flowers. Why do you ask? Do you want to test it again?" "That's what I want to do." Ling Xiao thought to himself, "You didn't really test my potential before. You said that I can't do it. If I test it again, I'm afraid you won't have any hope. You won't give me the best thing, right?" Master Bai Yun looked at Ling Xiao, although he did not know what this kid was thinking. Since the relationship between them had improved, he had to give it his all. Since he had placed his hopes of revenge and saving his daughter on this kid, he decided to test it again. Thinking of this, he took out the 7-star flower. Ling Xiao cut his finger and dripped a drop of blood on it. Buzz! At that moment, the 7-star flower shone brightly. 1 flower lit up with 3 colors. 2 flowers lit up with 3 colors. Then 3 flowers, 4 flowers, 5 flowers. During the last test, because the 7-star flower was broken, there were only 4 flowers. Therefore, the situation could not be seen at all. At that time, Master Bai Yun's evaluation of Ling Xiao was that his 3 potentials had reached 9 out of 4 stars, the same as Dai Yuling's. But today, 5 flowers lit up at once, and they were all 3 colors. This shocked Master Bayun. Your potential is actually 3 colors and 5 stars. I really misjudged you. It seems that you have broken away from the mortal body and advanced to the treasure body, Master Bayun said excitedly. Although there was still a big gap between his potential and Mingtian's and Zuolang's, after all, he already had the absolute qualifications to advance to the master state. At this moment, there was more spirit in his eyes that were originally filled with despair. He was even more excited than when he heard that his daughter was still alive. Master, why are you in such a hurry? Ling Xiao smiled. The colors of the 7th star flower continued to change. 6 flowers, 7 flowers, 7 stars, and it's all 7 stars. This is incredible. Your potential is even stronger than Mingtian and Zuolong. I really was blind. Why didn't I listen to Lin Zai's words? I really regret it. Master Bayun's whole body was trembling. He had never seen someone with such potential at the peak of 7 stars. Even Empyrean Demon Flame couldn't achieve this. Master, you don't have to regret it. Ling Xiao smiled and said, Let bygones be bygones. The reason why I am willing to take the test again today is to tell you that I still have a high chance of completing the task you gave me. I just don't know what benefits you can give me. Don't worry. As long as I can give you something, I will give it all to you. Master Bayun had never been as anxious as he was now. He really wanted to go back in time so that he could pass on his lost knowledge to Ling Xiao. Chapter 239. Knowing Ling Xiao's true aptitude, Master Bayun really did his best to cultivate him. Although a lot of resources were wasted on Ming Tian and Zuolong, because Ming Tian and Zuolong did not focus on cultivating their bodies, there were still about 10 Qian Yuan bone-changing pills. In addition to nearly 500 mid-grade spirit stones and about 100 high-grade spirit stones, it was definitely enough for Ling Xiao to improve his cultivation before going to Yuehua school. With the Qian Yuan bone-changing pills, Ling Xiao naturally focused on the cultivation of Sky Dragon Golden Body. The 2 doppelgangers respectively cultivated Divine Prison King Fist and Snow Lotus Sword Art. Needless to say, Divine Prison King Fist was currently his strongest bare-handed attack, and once it was cultivated to perfection, it would automatically evolve into a transcendent martial art. Snow Lotus Sword Art focused on comprehension, so pills were not of much help. It was enough to let his doppelgangers slowly comprehend it. His main body was naturally focused on the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body. Ever since he learned that there was still the Dragon Emperor's protective armor above the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body, he was even more motivated to cultivate. This time, Master Bayun had been guarding him. So Ling Xiao had the courage to take 3 Qian Yuan bone-changing pills at once. Even if something happened during the process, there was a transcendent martial artist to help him, so there was no need to be afraid. This was the advantage of having a master. The Qian Yuan bone-changing pills' effect was very overbearing. 1 pill could make people want to die. After using it, the whole body's bones would be shattered and reborn. That kind of pain really made people feel like they were better off dead. Taking 3 pills at once, the effect was naturally even more terrifying. Most people would not dare to do so. But Ling Xiao not only cultivated the 9 transformation golden body technique to the 9th transformation, but he could also use gold to repair his body. Moreover, he also cultivated the Sky Dragon Golden Body to the 3rd level, so his injury recovery speed was much faster. In addition, Master Bayun, a transcendent martial artist, was guarding him, so he dared to go crazy. 3 days later, with the help of Master Bayun, he successfully went through a hellish torture and finally completely dissolved the terrifying effect of the Qian Yuan bone-changing pill. But to fully absorb and digest it, it would still take a period of time. At this time, Master Bayun had already left because what Ling Xiao needed to do next was to absorb the remaining effect of the pill and recover his body. There was not much point for him to stay here. Sure Lei had left Sky Cloud City yesterday, and he should have returned to the Elephant Clan. Dai Yuling and Lung Mei were both at the critical moment of improving their cultivation. He couldn't favor one and discriminate against the other, so he went out to stand guard for them. He didn't want to repeat the mistakes he had made in the past, so he tried his best to ensure that he could be extremely benevolent to his enemies. The effects of 3 Heaven Essence bone-changing pills were truly astonishing. It directly allowed Ling Xiao's heavenly dragon golden body to advance to the peak of the 3rd level. It qian yuan to you. It would not to breakthrough body. He still had 7 or 8 Heaven Essence bone-changing pills. If he used all of them, he would be able to break through. However, he couldn't rush it yet. He had to wait for his body to adapt to his current level of toughness before he could take his time. He was anxious to raise his ability, but he also understood that some things could not be rushed. Besides that, the additional benefit of these 3 Qian Yuan bone-changing pills was that his cultivation had already advanced from the late stage of the 8th level to the peak of the 8th level. He was getting closer to the 9th level of the martial vein. There were only 20 days left before Yuehua School's enrollment expansion. Master Bai Yun said that it would take at least 4 to 5 days to rush from Sky Cloud City to Yuehua School. If something happened along the way, it might take even longer. So he reminded the 3 disciples to set off 10 days earlier. Now Ling Xiao only had 10 days left to raise his cultivation. In these 10 days, Ling Xiao tried his best to consolidate the cultivation of the Sky Dragon golden body. At the same time, he continued to cultivate the Snow Lotus sword skill and God Prison King's fist. 9 days later, Ling Xiao felt that his body had already adapted to the peak of the 3rd level of the Heavenly Dragon golden body, and he had finally comprehended the 3rd move of the God Prison King's fist, Impermanence Twist. When he executed the palm technique, his soul power would automatically cooperate and cause the enemy to hallucinate, as if they were being chased by the black and white impermanence from hell. This palm technique was still able to cause physical and mental torture to the enemy. This terrifying effect was something that many extraordinary martial arts could not achieve. In addition, after absorbing the experience of the extraordinary martial arts displayed by He Suo and Master Bai Yun during the battle, he had finally successfully condensed the 2nd move, Melting Water. The 1st move, Flying Snow, was extremely fast and had a good freezing effect. The 2nd move, Melting Water, was able to form a strange force field, causing the opponent to lose their balance and state. It could be said that once this move was executed, the weaker opponents would not even be able to get close to him. In addition, Ling Xiao had an unexpected gain. The number of golden dragon cells in his body had already reached 20. In other words, just relying on these 20 golden dragon cells, he had an extra 2,000 pounds of strength compared to the average practitioner. This was simply heaven-defying for practitioners below the extraordinary martial arts realm. One had to know that even Master Bai Yun, who had just broken through to the extraordinary martial arts realm, did not have more than 10,000 pounds of strength. What did it mean to have an extra 2,000 pounds of strength? After coming out of seclusion with satisfaction, Ling Xiao went to find Master Bai Yun. At this time, Dai Yuling and Cold Plum were still in seclusion. According to Master Bai Yun, Dai Yuling had broken through to the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein realm, and Cold Plum had also advanced to the early stage of the 8th level of the martial vein realm. They should be coming out of seclusion soon and should be consolidating their cultivation. Ling Xiao was very happy with the progress of his 2 friends. Master, disciple has some questions. I hope Master can answer them. Ling Xiao saw that Dai Yuling and Cold Plum had not come out of seclusion and could not go to Yuehua School now, so he took the opportunity to ask some questions in his heart. Oh, tell me. Master Bai Yun's complexion was gradually recovering, and his spirit was much better. Although his 7-star aptitude was not the best in the 12 sects, it was enough as long as he was stronger than Ming Tian and the Flame Deity. He firmly believed that Ling Xiao could help him do what he wanted to do, but could not. Master, you said before that there is a stronger Dragon Emperor protective art above Heavenly Dragon Golden Body, but disciple does not understand. Heavenly Dragon Golden Body is already a transcendent martial art, and it should be one of the stronger transcendent martial arts. Why is there a stronger defensive martial art above it? Master Bai Yun smiled and said, "That's a good question. Well, those two kids have also come out of seclusion. Let's talk about it when they arrive." Of course. Ling Xiao nodded. After a while, Dai Yuling and Cold Plum also arrived at the True Spirit Palace. Master Bai Yun gestured for the two to sit down, and then said, "In your opinion, are there two types of martial arts? Secular martial arts and transcendent martial arts?" The three of them nodded. Chapter 240. Master Bai Yun said with a smile, "The real complete martial arts actually starts from the extraordinary martial arts that you mentioned. This is called gold grade martial arts in the sect. Above it, there are 3 grades: jade grade, celestial grade, and divine grade. It can't be. Most of the martial arts that we worked so hard to cultivate are actually incomplete?" Dai Yuling was dumbfounded. Ling Xiao was not surprised. In fact, he had already noticed this. When the Mountain River martial spirit analyzed and practiced these martial arts, it had already given him a reminder. However, the Mountain River martial spirit did not know what the complete version of these martial arts were. Therefore, he could only cultivate it first. Although it was an emasculated or simplified version of the martial arts, it should not be considered incomplete. It was just more suitable for ordinary people to cultivate. It was just that the degree of complexity was different, and the level that could be cultivated was different. It was estimated that when Ling Xiao entered the sect in the future, he might encounter many martial arts that he had cultivated before. However, the level of these martial arts would be completely different. Gold grade, jade grade, celestial grade, and divine grade. These were the real grades of martial arts. That's right, immortal grade and divine grade martial arts currently do not exist in the Heavenly Dragon continent. The human world once encountered a catastrophe. These 2 types of martial arts disappeared along with martial spirits. Martial spirits can still be awakened, but I'm afraid that such high-level martial arts can only be found in other continents. Master Bai Yun said with pity, "Well, Ling Xiao, this is the end of the question. Actually, I don't know much about these things. After you join the Yuehua school, I'm afraid you will get more information and materials than I do. Maybe I will need your help." Master Bai Yun changed the topic and said, "Next, we will go to the Yuehua school. Before we go, there are some things that I need to tell you. This will be very important to you." Ling Xiao, Dai Yuling, and Cold Plum knew very well that Master Bai Yun was going to impart his experience. After all, Master Bai Yun had been in the Yuehua school before. Although he was a failure, the more failures he had, the more experience he would gain. There was no harm in listening to him. The 3 of them listened very carefully, because this might be related to their future path of martial arts. If you're lucky enough to enter Yuehua school, the first thing you have to do is to keep a low profile and work hard on your cultivation. The status of an outer sect disciple is very low. Although the sect has a rule that forbids inner sect disciples from killing each other, if an outer sect disciple is crippled, there won't be any problems. The higher-ups won't even look into it. What I mean is, try not to show off in the outer sect. Instead, try to keep a low profile until you become an inner sect disciple. The 3 of them understood Grandmaster Bai Yun's words. After all, the flame deity had a very high status. If he saw that Grandmaster Bai Yun's disciples were all trash, he would probably be happy to keep them. When he was unhappy, he could trample on them for fun. If his aptitude was too good, then he might really trigger the flame deity's killing intent. At that time, it would be very easy for them to be accidentally killed. Once you become an inner sect disciple, your status in the sect will greatly increase. At that time, you have to show off your strength as much as possible. The better your aptitude and the stronger your strength, the more protection you will receive from the sect. At that time, even the flame deity won't dare to touch you easily. Ling Xiao nodded. According to his experience in the Ling family, this was indeed true. There's another thing you have to pay attention to. Once your aptitude is exposed, don't be arrogant. At that time, if there are elders or powerhouses of the same level who want to rope you in, you can join them if you think it's enough. Grandmaster Baiyun suddenly became serious. This is very important. I've seen many geniuses who were extremely arrogant. They didn't give face to anyone and didn't put anyone in their eyes. In the end, not long after, they died in the middle of a mission. Although they were killed by external enemies, it was obvious that no one was willing to help them. Not only would that not help them, but it would also increase the number of enemies. One Empyrean demon flame is already enough for you to deal with. If there's an elder-level enemy, you're dead for sure. So, you must remember, no matter what, you must always learn to pick a side. Being neutral in the sect is the stupidest thing to do, especially when you already have enemies. Remember all of this? Yes. In fact, what Grandmaster Baiyun said was something that Ling Xiao had experienced personally. This was the way he survived in the Ling family. First, he hid his strength and bided his time. Then, he shocked the world with a single brilliant feat then. He found second Master Ling to back him up. After going to the Yuehua school, although the place was bigger and the opponents were stronger, the things he had to do didn't change. Okay, since you've remembered it, pack up a little and set off immediately. Time waits for no one. The earlier we get there, the earlier we can prepare. Grandmaster Baiyun stood up and said, "Yes, Grandmaster." Ling Xiao and the other two returned to their rooms and packed up a little. Then they went back to bid farewell to the Baiyun monastery master and Lin Zhe. Because time was tight, no one said much. Before leaving, Lin Zhe and the Baiyun monastery master gave the three of them the spiritual stones and true elemental pills that they had painstakingly accumulated. There were low-grade, mid-grade, and high-grade spiritual stones. Most of the true elemental pills were low-grade, but they were very effective in recovering true elemental pills. After that, the three of them returned to the Baiyun monastery and followed Grandmaster Baiyun to the Yuehua school. The three of them didn't take a carriage or ride a horse. Instead, they chose to walk. Based on their light body techniques, their speed was much faster than a 1,000-mile horse. It was even faster than some demonic beasts. Plus the true elemental pills, which could recover their true elemental pills. With a little rest, they could travel 1,000 miles in a day easily. Yuehua School was thousands of miles away from Sky Cloud City. Based on the three of them's speed, they estimated that they would take 7 to 8 days to reach. This was the reason why Grandmaster Baiyun was in a hurry to set off. 7 days passed by quickly, and they didn't meet with any trouble along the way. After all, they had the Transcendence following them. If they met any ordinary demonic beasts, they could easily get rid of them. On the morning of the 8th day, the sky was still dark. The four of them arrived at a place with beautiful scenery. The sky had just turned white, and with the help of the faint light, they could see that this place was like a paradise on earth. Heavens, is this where Yuehua School is located? The air here makes one feel energetic, as if there's some miraculous healing effect. Dai Yuling couldn't help but sigh, and the entire mountain is filled with spiritual herbs. These are hard to find in places where ordinary people live. This is just the border. There's another 100 miles or so before we reach the foot of the mountain where Yuehua School is located. When we reach there, you will understand why the hidden sects are so fascinating to practitioners. Grandmaster Baiyun smiled and increased his speed as he rushed forward. Although the journey here was treacherous and there were many places with steep cliffs, but to him and the other three, it wasn't much. Chapter 241. As far as the eye could see, there was a long flight of stairs. There were thousands of stone steps. At the foot of the mountain was the huge plaque of Yuehua School. There were disciples guarding it all year round. Ordinary people couldn't enter at all. As for the other directions of Yuehua Mountain, there were really steep cliffs. Even ordinary birds couldn't fly over them, let alone martial artists. Therefore, there was only one way to enter Yuehua Mountain, unless you reached the celestial realm and could really fly. Otherwise, even if you had a flying-type martial soul, you couldn't cross it because the quality of the energy in your body was too poor. Let's go. We're already late. Master Baiyun was originally afraid that they would be late, so he asked his disciples to set off 10 days in advance. However, when they arrived, they found that there were already hundreds of people gathered at the foot of the mountain. Among them, those under the age of 20 should be the geniuses who came to participate in the exam. As for those over the age of 20, they were probably accompanying these young people. After all, the journey was dangerous. Ling Xiao and the other two followed Master Baiyun to the foot of the mountain. "Old man Baiyun, how have you been?" "Su Ling." As soon as they arrived at the foot of the mountain, they heard someone calling Master Baiyun's name in a very disrespectful tone. Master Baiyun looked up and couldn't help but exclaim. Ling Xiao also looked at that person. This person was about 40 years old. His cultivation was probably not inferior to Master Baiyun's. In fact, the most surprising thing was that there were 4 people standing beside him. 3 of them were familiar faces: Zhuhua, Jiawu, Lu Xing. As for the other person, he was very unfamiliar. He looked to be about 14 or 15 years old. He was dressed very gorgeously. Looking at his cultivation, he was actually much stronger than the other 3. He was already at the early 9th level of the martial vein. His aptitude seemed to be on par with Ming Tian and Zhuolong. Ling Xiao knew about Su Ling. On the way to Yuehua School, Master Baiyun gave them a brief introduction of the current situation of the Tianlong continent, especially the general situation of the transcendent warriors. Su Ling was the only transcendent warrior in the ninja clan. The young girl at the early 9th level of the martial vein was his daughter, Su Ying. In Shinobi, Su Ling is the imperial family, the true successor of Su Dao. What was interesting was that Su Ling was also a disciple of Yuehua School, but his status was higher than Master Baiyun's, so he had 4 recommendations. "Old man Baiyun, there's no need to be so agitated. You and I did have some grudges in the past, but since the sect is expanding, we belong to the disadvantaged group. It's better to cooperate, sincerely. I won't introduce the other 3. This is my daughter, Su Ying. Her potential isn't any worse than Ming Tian and Zhuolong." As he spoke, Su Ling was rather proud of himself. Originally, he was hesitant about who to recommend. Who would have thought that White Cloud would be targeted by the flame deity, which led to the departure of several ninja clan's disciples? Although Zhuhua, Jiawu, and Lu Xing's potential couldn't compare to Su Ying's, since they were recruiting, they should still have a chance of entering the sect. There were actually quite a few people who harbored such thoughts. Ling Xiao casually glanced around. Among the youths at the foot of the mountain, the oldest was just 20 years old, and the youngest was only 12 or 13 years old. The strongest was already at the peak of the 9th level of the martial vein, but he was already 20 years old. The weakest was at the 7th level of the martial vein, and these children were only 12 or 13 years old. In other words, they came to participate in the exam to compete for potential, not strength. Facing these geniuses, Ling Xiao didn't have any emotional fluctuations. He was only 14 years old and was already at the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein, and this was because he had delayed for more than a decade. The real cultivation began when he was 13 years old. Otherwise, his cultivation would have been heaven-defying. After all, it had only been a little more than a year, and he had advanced from the 1st level of the martial vein to the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein. In terms of potential, he wasn't afraid of anyone. All of these youths were basically geniuses gathered by the Yuehua schools outer disciples. Because the Yuehua school's territory was in northern Han, most of the geniuses came from northern Han. There were also some geniuses from the ninja clan, the Jadeite clan, and the barbarian clan. Of course, there were also geniuses from other countries of the sacred dynasty. It was just that their numbers were relatively small. The 4 princes and 1 princess of northern Han have all come. I wonder how many of them will be chosen. Dai Yuling pointed at a few people surrounded by the crowd. Ling Xiao followed his finger and looked. In the crowd, there were indeed 5 people dressed gorgeously and filled with the aura of nobility. These 5 people were between 14 and 18 years old, and all of them met the age requirements. Among the 5, the most eye-catching one was naturally the beautiful princess, Zhao Xi. Zhao Xi and Ling Xiao were similar in age and cultivation. They were both at the peak of the 8th level of the martial vein, which meant that their potential wasn't bad. Of course, the 5 of them were the most eye-catching, but their potential and cultivation weren't the strongest. Ling Xiao glanced at them and ignored them, continuing to observe the rest of the people. Under the soul-entrancing state, he could easily determine the potential of these people. Among these people, there were 2 with the best potential. One was Su Ying, and the other was the 3rd prince of northern Han, Zhao Ji. The potential of these 2 people didn't lose to Ming Tian and Zhuolong. Sure enough, outside of Baiyun province, there were too many geniuses. Even so, Ling Xiao only secretly remembered them in his heart and didn't feel much emotion. Zhuolong had already been killed by him. Potential was a part of it, but battle technique was equally important. Otherwise, the result would be the same as Zhuolong's. Not to mention that his potential wasn't any worse than Ming Tian and Zhuolong. Even if it was worse, he had nothing to be afraid of. Sometimes, living a long life was more important than potential. Su Ling, stop pretending in front of this old man. Who doesn't know that you frequently flatter that Moyen? No wonder these 3 juniors were willing to follow you. They don't need to be suppressed by Moyen. Grandmaster Baiyun coldly snorted. Although he could understand the choice of Zhu Hua and the other 2, he still felt extremely unhappy. Which master could tolerate their own disciples betraying the sect? The fact that he didn't kill them was already very restrained. This is called a wise man submits to circumstances. You don't flatter, but wasn't your best disciple, Ming Tian, taken away by the flame deity? Su Ling ridiculed. Grandmaster Baiyun coldly snorted and didn't explain anything. He didn't want to expose Ling Xiao's potential. It didn't matter even if he had to suffer some anger. Su Ling smiled and suddenly turned his gaze to Ling Xiao. This kid is the one who killed Zhuolong, right? That's right, it's me, Ling Xiao said with a nod. There was nothing to hide, and it couldn't be hidden. Good. Very good. You even dared to kill Zhuolong. You're really something. My dear daughter, you must recognize him. He is the one who killed your fiancé. Chapter 242. Understood, father. Su Ying nodded and then looked at Ling Xiao. Her eyes were filled with resentment and coldness. Ling Xiao only glanced at her indifferently and did not say anything. He and Zhuolong fought fair and square. There were no sneak attacks or tricks. Moreover, it was a life and death battle on the life and death cliff. They even signed a life and death contract. Zhuolong wanted to kill him, but was killed by him instead. He did not feel the slightest bit of guilt, nor did he feel any sympathy. I will definitely kill you. Su Ying's words were very direct and did not beat around the bush. Zhuolong also said the same thing, but the one lying in the coffin is him, not me. Ling Xiao said in a tit-for-tat manner. His current target was no longer the so-called geniuses like Ming Tian, Su Ying, and Zhao Ji. His target was He Suo, the flame deity, and the other geniuses of the previous generation. To put it bluntly, he did not put his peers in his eyes. If he could not even surpass these people, how could he surpass the senior experts? What a big tone. I wonder how many stars little brother's potential is? Su Ling asked with a smile. 5 stars. Ling Xiao said indifferently. He planned to hide the matter of his potential a little. In any case, this potential was something he could control. As long as he did not circulate his mountain and river martial spirit, his potential was 5 stars. It was enough for him to pass the Yuehua School's potential assessment. Humph! A mere 5 stars talent dares to boast shamelessly. What a joke! Su Ying's face revealed an intense disdain. Ling Xiao did not say anything. He was too lazy to bicker with her. He had encountered this kind of thing many times and had gradually gotten used to it. There were too many people, and the waiting time for the identity verification was also very long. After all, the Yuehua School did not want spies from other sects to sneak in. During this long period of waiting, unexpected things were bound to happen. Assassin! Quickly catch the assassin! Suddenly, a cry of alarm sounded. Ling Xiao looked at the place where the sound came from. It was the location of the 4 princes and 1 princess of Northern Han. At this moment, a glaring wound could be seen on the first prince's throat. His throat had already been cut. It looked like he was about to die. Even if it was Ling Xiao, once his throat was cut, he would not be able to survive. The first prince's strength was not low. He was at the peak of the 8th layer martial vein. In the crowd, a black shadow quickly fled into the distance. Ling Xiao could stop this person, but he didn't move. Northern Han's imperial family was too far away from him. There was no need for him to meddle in their affairs. However, he did not expect that there would be someone who dared to assassinate a prince of Northern Han at the foot of the Yuehua sect's mountain. Indeed, it was as He Sua had said. As long as one did not join the Yuehua sect, he would dare to kill. Where? The 3rd prince, Zhao Ji, had unexpectedly discovered the assassin. This was really rare. This Zhao Ji really does have some ability. Zhao Ji's figure flashed. His speed was as fast as a gale. In the blink of an eye, he was near the assassin. Seeing that he could not escape, the assassin turned around and attacked. Zhao Ji was 16 years old. His cultivation was at the late 9th layer martial vein. He was almost the same as Ming Tian a month ago. That assassin was also at the late 9th layer martial vein. His strength was definitely not ordinary. However, the 2 of them had only exchanged 3 blows. Zhao Ji's terrifying kick set the assassin's body ablaze. In an instant, only his bones were left. Frightening. This fellow is simply a second Ming Tian. No, his potential might be even more terrifying than Ming Tian's. Ling Xiao inwardly thought. There is always someone better than you. This saying was not wrong. However, Zhao Ji's luck was not as good as Ming Tian's. Ming Tian had already been nurtured by the flame deity. In a month's time, it was unknown how much progress he would have made. Is that the strength of Northern Han's 3rd prince, Zhao Ji? I'm afraid that he will definitely take 1st place in this Yuehua School's examination. That's right. This person is proficient in leg techniques. His leg techniques are extremely domineering. Among the princes and princesses, he is the strongest. As expected of His Highness, he is too powerful. The discussions rose and fell one after another. The 3rd prince, Zhao Ji, was very pleased. He had also successfully become a thorn in the side of various geniuses. However, it was likely that he was not afraid of being viewed with hostility. The more others viewed him with hostility, the happier he would be. Speaking of this expansion examination, it was actually not complicated. The examination was divided into 4 sections. Each section would have a score. In the end, qualified disciples would be selected according to the score. Potential was only one of the sections. However, it accounted for a relatively large proportion. Out of the 4 sections, the full score for the other 3 sections was 10 points. Only potential had a full score of 30 points. Potential accounted for 50% of the total score. In other words, geniuses with good potential would naturally have a huge advantage. At present, it was still unclear how many disciples the Yuehua school would be recruiting. As a result, Ling Xiao did not dare to conceal his strength. As for potential, he decided that it would be fine if his score was not too high or too low. Otherwise, if his total score did not meet the requirements, he would be asking for trouble. If the Yuehua school wanted to recruit 100 disciples, then he only needed to score within the top 100. However, if the school only recruited 10 disciples, then his total score would have to be within the top 10. However, the total number of disciples recruited would likely be announced before the examination began. Thus, he was not in a hurry. Naturally, this information was given to him by Grandmaster Baiyun. Before the enrollment expansion, the Yuehua school's examination would normally only recruit 10 disciples. Since the enrollment expansion was taking place, the number would likely be higher than that. As time passed, it was finally Ling Xiao's turn to enter the school. At this moment, Ling Xiao noticed that the few Yuehua school disciples who were in charge of evaluating the geniuses were all transcendents. If Ling Xiao saw this from the outside world, he would have thought that he was hallucinating. Why did it feel like the transcendents, who were like treasures in the past, had become cabbages that could be found everywhere? A sect's power was indeed something to look forward to. He noticed that the potential of these Yuehua school disciples was between 5-star and 6-star. They were not even as good as Cold Plum, let alone him. This gave people very high expectations. As long as he worked hard, he would definitely reach the transcendence one day, and it would be very fast. He had a clean background. Dai Yuling and Cold Plum also knew about their backgrounds. Although Cold Plum was once a slave, the Yuehua school obviously did not care about this. Thus, the three of them successfully passed the first threshold. Otherwise, they would not even be able to participate in the examination. Grandmaster, why don't I see any buildings in the Yuehua school? After entering the school, they could only see the stairs. However, they could not see any buildings on the mountainside or the peak. This made Dai Yuling feel very strange. Actually, Cold Plum was also very surprised. Chapter 243. It's not that they don't exist. You just can't see them. When you reach the Transcendence realm, you'll be able to see some shadows. You'll slowly get used to it. Master Baiyun smiled and led the three of them up the mountain. The sun had already risen to the middle of the sky, but it was really difficult for the sunlight to penetrate the forest. It only left specks of light on the ground. Ling Xiao continued to pay attention to the situation at the top of the mountain. He had a feeling that there was a special ancient power in Mount Yuehua. Because of this power, 10 more golden dragon cells in his body had awakened, increasing from 20 to 30. The tiny golden dragons were flying around in the cells, looking especially cheerful. Not only that, but his mountain river martial soul also seemed to have sensed a familiar power and started to operate involuntarily. At that moment, Ling Xiao realized that he could see things more clearly and his thoughts were sharper. All his abilities seemed to have improved by leaps and bounds. He naturally didn't dare to tell others about this, nor did he dare to ask Master Baiyun. After all, whether it was the golden dragon cells or the mountain river martial soul, these were secrets that he couldn't reveal even if he was beaten to death. Otherwise, there would be big problems. Yuehua School's mountain path was much longer than Baiyun Temple's. The steps were 4 to 5 times more than Baiyun Temple's. The most frightening thing was that these stone steps were not special. There seemed to be some kind of strange power pulling at people's bodies, making everyone who stepped on the stone steps feel as if their legs were filled with lead. It was an uncomfortable feeling. Ling Xiao suddenly thought of the Baiyun Temple's assessment. Since Master Baiyun was a disciple of Yuehua School, he must have referred to Yuehua School in many aspects of the assessment. Maybe these stone steps were one of the assessments. Thinking of this, he glanced at Master Baiyun. However, Master Baiyun smiled bitterly and didn't say anything. It seemed that Master Baiyun couldn't speak carelessly after reaching this place, especially when it came to the assessment. Once the secret was exposed, his recommendation would be revoked. Ling Xiao wasn't sure if that was the case, but his intuition told him that it was right. He started to speed up. Dai Yuling and Cold Plum followed him. Since he couldn't expose too much of his potential, Ling Xiao would have to score more points in other tests. If this was the first test, he wouldn't dare to slack off. At the very least, he should get full marks. Having good physical strength was nothing more than having well-developed limbs. It wouldn't attract any attention. Moreover, he believed that there would be many people who scored full marks in this category. In the process, he found that some of the young geniuses were actually riding on their family members or servants, and he couldn't help but shake his head secretly. This kind of person couldn't even endure this little bit of hardship. How could he pass the test? He would probably score a 0 in this round. Among them, there was a 12 or 13-year-old boy. He looked fair and clean, but his body was very weak. It was as if he would be blown away by the wind as soon as he walked. This person was only 12 or 13 years old, but his cultivation was not inferior to Ling Xiao's. It was enough to show that his potential was outstanding. However, he would definitely score 0 in this category. This was because he was actually using a type of mechanical beast to move around. This mechanical beast only had 2 legs. He sat on it, and it seemed to be very comfortable. After about a quarter of an hour, Ling Xiao and the first group of youths reached the 1,000th stone step. This wasn't the top of the mountain, but somewhere on the mountainside. There was another entrance to the mountain here. It was obviously made of special materials. It was estimated that even a transcendent realm cultivator wouldn't be able to break it. Here, Ling Xiao and the others each received a jade token with a number on it. Ling Xiao's number was 3, because he was the 3rd person to reach here. The first was Xiao Ji. The second was Su Ying. Cold Plum was the 4th, and Dai Yuling was a little worse, being ranked 20th. Several Yuehua school disciples were handing out jade tokens. There was also a person sitting on a stone block, and 7 or 8 Transcendent Realm disciples were standing on his left and right. Master Baiyun and Su Ling stepped forward and cupped their fists to the middle-aged man sitting on the stone block. "Greetings, Elder Bai." This person was only in his 40s, but he was actually an elder. Moreover, his cultivation seemed to be very terrifying. He was even stronger than the people standing on his left and right. Ling Xiao didn't dare to check the middle-aged man's cultivation, but he could feel that this person's cultivation was much stronger than his master, Master Baiyun. Since he was an elder, even if he wasn't in the heaven realm, he was close to it. In the Yuehua school, there were inner sect elders and outer sect elders. This middle-aged man should be an outer sect elder, so he didn't have to be in the heaven realm. However, his strength was definitely one of the best in the outer sect. Elder Bai just glanced at the crowd and nodded. He continued to drink tea and wait. The others also stood respectfully to the side. They didn't even dare to speak too loudly, let alone make a move. After waiting for a full 2 hours, all the disciples who came to participate in the assessment finally gathered here. I forgot to tell you that the stone steps are the first assessment. In this assessment, some people got a perfect score of 10, while others didn't get a single point. Now, let's move on to the second assessment. He seemed to be too lazy to explain anything. He stood up and walked toward the giant door. "I don't accept this. You didn't tell me in advance that this was an assessment. Otherwise, I wouldn't have gotten a 0. There were all kinds of people in this world, and there were even more impulsive and conceited people. Someone who got a 0 would definitely be unhappy." Therefore, a young genius stood up and shouted, "Who else doesn't accept this?" Elder Bai just smiled faintly and didn't seem to be angry. He asked, "I don't accept this either. Why is it so? It's not fair." More than a dozen people stood up. Their elders wanted to stop them, but unfortunately, Some were too late, and some couldn't stop them at all. A total of 16 people. Very good. Hey, Su'a, take back the jade tokens of these 16 people and tell them to get lost immediately. If they don't obey, throw them down the mountain and feed them to the dogs. After Elder Bai finished speaking, he ignored these people and walked straight to the door. Ling Xiao couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. The people of the Yuehua school were really domineering. They disqualified them for such a small matter. Then he looked at He Su'a. This transcendent warrior had once seriously injured Master Bai Yin, but he was injured by Master Bai Yun's void-piercing strike. It was obvious that half of his body had been modified into a mechanical puppet. The body made of metal was still a little stiff, but it seemed to be quite sturdy. He probably used the mechanism study of the Blue Eyes race. That wasn't right. The mechanism study of the Blue Eyes race was split from the human race. The mechanism study of the Yuehua school was more authentic and ancient. He Su'a looked coldly at Ling Xiao, but didn't dare to do anything. With Elder Bai here, he didn't dare to act rashly. The three of you don't need to worry. He Su'a is only a transcendent stage 2 martial artist. He won't dare to act rashly in front of Elder Bai. Chapter 244. Everyone, come over and stand according to your number plates. Elder Bai's expression remained cold, as if everyone owed him money. It was not a smile, and there was no gentleness to speak of. From the reaction of the Yuehua school's disciples, it was clear that Elder Bai was usually very strict. Otherwise, they would definitely not be so obedient. However, this was also good. Ling Xiao liked this kind of cold person. Generally, this kind of person was not likely to be the kind of person who was unfair. This was definitely beneficial to him. Next, we will proceed to the second assessment, the test of potential. Elder Bai stood under the huge mountain gate and said, "You should have seen this mountain gate. It is a treasure forged by our Yuehua school's most outstanding blacksmith. The principle is similar to the 7-star flower, but the effect is more comprehensive and better." After hearing Elder Bai's words, Ling Xiao understood. Although the 7-star flower could test one's potential, it obviously did not work for potentials above 7 stars. This mountain gate was probably designed by the blacksmith according to the principle of the 7-star flower. Next, from the back to the front, you will begin to take the test. Do not use any martial arts techniques. Condense your true essence on your palm, then hit the mountain gate. After Elder Bai finished speaking, he sat at the side and drank tea. Naturally, someone would be in charge of the detailed test process for him. Number 356, Lu Tian. Here. Hearing the name, Lu Tian hurriedly walked out of the crowd and walked to the mountain gate. Then he took a deep breath and hit the mountain gate according to Elder Bai's instructions. The mountain gate was expected to make a loud sound, but there was no sound at all. Lu Tian's hand even seemed to have sunk into the mountain gate. Soft? Ling Xiao was a little surprised. When he saw the bronze gate, he thought it was made of metal. It was probably a special material that he had never seen before. Lu Tian's palm hit the mountain gate, but there was no reaction at all. That's impossible. My potential is clearly 5 stars. Is there something wrong with your door? Lu Tian turned pale with fright as he shouted. I forgot to tell you that the 7-star flower was used to test one's potential before the 12 sects reappeared in the world. However, it can only test the potential of a martial artist without a complete martial soul. This is a huge flaw. Elder Bai explained, the reason why this door was designed is to make up for the flaws of the 7-star flower. This is also the standard test in the sect. There is a big difference between it and the 7-star flower. It does not include the mortal body. In other words, 1 star represents a mortal body. What? Upon hearing this, everyone, including Ling Xiao, was shocked. It seemed that the reappearance of the 12 sects was not a simple matter. Many of the rules in this world might have undergone subtle changes, but many people were still unaware of it. But I do have a 5-star potential. If I were to be tested here, I should have a mortal treasure body. Lu Tian said, "That's a good question. Why?" Elder Bai suddenly raised his voice and said, "I seem to have forgotten another thing. If you want to be tested as a treasure body, at least 10% of your martial path remnant soul must be awakened. In other words, if you don't have a martial path remnant soul, no matter how high your potential is in the previous test, it is meaningless here." As soon as he said this, many people were dumbfounded. There were not many people who had awakened a martial path remnant soul. Those who had a complete martial path remnant soul were even rarer. The Yuehua school's requirements were really high. Okay, I don't need to say more. Those who have not awakened a martial path remnant soul can leave now. When you leave, each of you will get a high-grade vital elemental pill as compensation. Elder Bai's words reflected the demeanor of the Yuehua school as a big sect. He probably wanted to win over these people. After all, it was really hard to say whether a martial path remnant soul would awaken a martial path remnant soul the next day. It would not be good to offend these children. This time, more than 200 people left silently. This was different from the other 3 assessments. If one's potential did not pass, they would be directly eliminated. As for the other 3 assessments, even if they got 0 points, they could continue to participate in the assessment. From this point, one could see the importance of potential. Not bad. It seems that after the appearance of the mountain and river martial soul, it has become easier to awaken a martial path remnant soul. Continue. Elder Bai revealed a hint of joy, but it disappeared in a flash. The second person to take the test was a girl. She slapped her palm, and something that looked like the petals of the 7-star flower appeared on the mountain gate. It was shining with a strange light. Ling Xiao noticed that the flower showed 3 colors. However, it was a little different from the 3 colors of the 7-star flower. They were black, white, and red. Black represented the potential of the soul. White represented the potential of the internal force, and red represented the potential of the body. This should be the standard display. Although he did not know why it was like this, there should be some conventional reasons. Very good, mortal grade, treasured body. You pass. 1 point. Next. The scoring rules here needed to be explained. 1 star, 1 point, belongs to the mortal grade, treasured body. 2 stars, 10 points, belongs to the fine grade, treasured body. 3 stars, 20 points, belongs to the precious grade, treasured body. 4 stars, 30 points, belongs to the immortal grade, treasured body. Above 5 stars, one could pass the test directly. The score was full. It could be seen that the higher the potential, the more benefits one would get. No matter how one looked at it, potential was obviously very important to the Yuehua school. 1 star here was equivalent to the 5 stars tested by the 7-star flower. The 5 stars here could not be tested by the 7-star flower. Therefore, the test result of this mountain gate was obviously much more accurate. Later, there were martial artists taking the test one after another. Some were crying tears of joy, while others were crying sadly. This kind of test was so cruel. If you did not pass, you would be eliminated directly. You would not even be qualified to take the other tests. Number 20, Dai Yuling. The fateful moment had arrived. When Dai Yuling was tested before, her 3 potentials were only 9 out of 4 stars. Now, she could not even light up a single star. She had really encountered a major crisis. Master Bai Yun was worried for Dai Yuling. This girl, Elder Bai, who was drinking tea, was suddenly stunned. He looked at Dai Yuling differently. However, he did not say anything. Dai Yuling took the test. As expected, one of the stars was only about 90% lit up. It was not completely lit up. Although there were 3 colors, it was a pity. Little girl, is your martial Tao remnant soul a healing type? Elder Bai suddenly asked when he saw Dai Yuling walking down with her head lowered. Yes. Dai Yuling nodded. As expected. How about this? Although you are not qualified to be an outer disciple of the Yuehua school, I have a friend who is the deacon of the Yuehua school, Herb Mountain. If you are willing, you can be her disciple and be considered an inner disciple in the future. Elder Bai said with a smile. This was a rare smile from him. Is this true? Dai Yuling could not believe this fact. Nonsense. How can Elder Bai lie to you? Hurry up and kneel down to thank him. He Suo snorted. This guy was not happy with Master Bai Yun's disciple anyway. He thought he could eliminate one of them, but he did not expect to encounter such a thing. He was really unhappy. He Suo, I am speaking. Since when is it your turn to interrupt? Elder Bai only glanced at He Suo, but his eyes were as sharp as swords, making He Suo tremble. I don't dare. Shut up if you don't dare. After saying that, he looked at Dai Yuling again, waiting for her answer. Of course I am willing. Chapter 245. Congratulations, Senior Sister Yuling. Ling Xiao sincerely congratulated Dai Yuling. He couldn't help Dai Yuling in terms of talent. All he could do was hope that Dai Yuling would encounter a miracle. However, a miracle happened today. He was happy for Dai Yuling. Thank you. You have to continue working hard too. Of course. While the two of them were chatting, a few more people were tested. Naturally, some are happy and some are sad. Number 10, Lung Hao. Ling Xiao noticed that Lung Hao was the young man who used the mechanism to climb the stairs. He was only 12 or 13 years old, but his lower body was obviously paralyzed. He only got a 0 in the first test. Ling Xiao paid a lot of attention to this young man. That was because after this young man learned that he got a 0 in the first test, he didn't panic at all. Instead, he smiled faintly. Was it because he had a card up his sleeve? With a smile on his face, Lung Hao gently placed his palm on the mountain gate. Boom! At that moment, it was as if there was an explosion between heaven and earth. No, it didn't seem like it. There was really thunder. In the sky, thunderclouds suddenly covered the sky, and the rumbling sound was endless. Even the heavens are jealous. Elder Bai, who had been sitting there steadily, suddenly stood up and looked at this scene in horror. In the history of Yuehua School, only one person had encountered such treatment. Boom! The explosion landed and directly blasted Lung Hao's body. Lung Hao's body was charred black, but there was still a smile on his face. At that moment, 5 bright stars appeared on the mountain gate. The light shone brightly and directly pierced through the thunderclouds in the sky, dispersing them. 5 stars. Heavens, that's a divine treasure body. Elder Bai knew clearly that although this mountain gate was forged by the best weapon refiner in the Yuehua sect, there was still a limit to how much it could withstand. 5 stars and a divine treasure body. That was the limit. Beyond that limit, the test couldn't be done. Of course, it wouldn't shatter like the 7-star flower. Everyone was stunned by this scene. A divine treasure body. Make an exception and admit him with full marks. Elder Bai announced excitedly. He really didn't expect that this young man, who looked like he could be blown away by a gust of wind, actually had such terrifying talent. They had heard that the flame deity had also taken in a genius youth with a divine grade treasure body called Ming Tian. The rest of the inner sect elders were extremely jealous. Once this news was spread out, even the elders would fight until their heads bled. Lung Hao looked a little embarrassed, but there was always a confident smile on his face. He looked so unfathomable. He turned around and used the mechanical limbs to walk to the side. Almost everyone was staring at him. There was envy. There was jealousy. There was surprise. This child is really lucky. Although his body is not good, once he is valued by the inner sect elders, it will be easy for him to recover. As Grandmaster Bai Yun spoke, he could not help but glance at Ling Xiao. Unfortunately, Even though Ling Zhao's aptitude was outstanding, he was only a treasure body at most. He was unable to gain the favor of the inner court elders. Otherwise, he could also use this method to attract the inner court elders' attention. In that case, it might be a shortcut. Buzz, ha ha ha. Which kid has a divine grade treasure body? Suddenly, there was a terrifying explosion. Before anyone realized what was going on, they saw a figure descending from the sky and landing near the door. He did not even look at Elder Bai and the others. That terrifying aura made everyone feel a huge pressure. Elder Bai also hurriedly stood up and cupped his hands. Heavenly Sovereign Golden Light. Forget it, forget it. There's no need to salute. It's you, right? Your body is not very good, but your inner strength potential is amazing. Divine grade, treasure body. Good. Very good. Will you be my disciple? Heavenly Sovereign Golden Light waved his hand at Elder Bai, indicating that he did not need to salute. Then his eyes locked onto Lung Hao. Even though this person's actions were very casual, everyone present could clearly feel that they had suddenly become ants on the ground, and this person was a god in the sky. They felt that he was too powerful, so powerful that it was unbelievable. At this moment, many of the geniuses who were previously arrogant felt that they were insignificant. The difference between a candle flame and a sun was just this. Even the experts in the transcendent realm could only kneel there and tremble, not daring to speak loudly. Among everyone, Ling Xiao did not feel that much pressure. With the mountain river martial soul, he did not feel any pressure. It was only because everyone was kneeling that he did not want to be too unique, so he reluctantly squatted down to avoid being too eye-catching. Lung Hao, what are you waiting for? This is Heavenly Sovereign Golden Light, a respected inner sect elder of Yuehua School. If you become his disciple, you will soon enter the inner sect and receive personal guidance from Heavenly Sovereign Golden Light. Your future is limitless. Seeing that Lung Hao seemed to be frightened, Elder Bai hurriedly reminded him. At this moment, Lung Hao came back to his senses and hurriedly replied, I am willing to cultivate with Heavenly Sovereign Golden Light. Ha ha ha, you have good taste. Let's go. Heavenly Sovereign Golden Light lifted Lung Hao's shoulders and turned into a golden light, disappearing into the mountains in an instant. Seeing the golden light disappear into the distance, Ling Xiao felt somewhat envious. Unfortunately, he cannot reveal his potential. It is not only because of the flame deity, but also because of his mountain river martial soul. If he wants to reveal a potential that is as strong as Lung Hao, or even stronger than Lung Hao, his mountain river martial soul must be activated. He cannot afford to take this risk. Therefore, he still intends to proceed according to the plan. He cannot be too flamboyant, but he cannot be too weak either. Otherwise, Hesu Ah and the flame deity will not believe him. After Lung Hao was taken away, the test continued. The test of potential had eliminated too many people. Among the remaining 100 or so people, nearly half of them had been eliminated. Number 5, Zhao Xi. Zhao Xi is the princess of Northern Han. Although she is very sad that her elder brother was assassinated, she cannot miss today's test. This noble and beautiful princess, who does not have any heirs, received the admiration of many people the moment she appeared. 3 stars, treasure body, second test, 20 points. Young and beautiful, noble status and aptitude that has reached the treasure body standard. Zhao Xi's future can be said to be bright. After all, the majority of the geniuses who pass this test are only 1 or 2 stars. Currently, Zhao Xi is the only one with 3 stars. Currently, no one with 4 stars has appeared. Among the 5 stars, there is Brother Lung Hao, but he is only 1. Number 4, Cold Plum. Although Cold Plum's appearance is also outstanding, she is not good at dressing up. Moreover, she is dressed in men's clothing and does not have any noble aura. Therefore, her appearance is more ordinary. However, her test results are not worse than Zhao Xi's. She is also a 3 stars treasure body. Yuehua School's 3 stars are the 7 stars of the 7-star flower. Her potential is even higher than the previous test. It is probably because of the growth of her martial soul. Chapter 246. Number 3, Ling Xiao. After Cold Plum finished her test, it was Ling Xiao's turn. Hearing Ling Xiao's name, Master Baiyun, Su Ling, and Su Ying's gazes all gathered together. Their target was Ling Xiao. Su Ying's face remained indifferent. In her opinion, Ling Xiao was only at the 8th level of the martial vein at the age of 14. His potential was definitely not higher than hers. But to be honest, she was still a little nervous. After all, Ling Xiao had killed Zuolong. His potential was still unknown. She, Su Ying, would definitely not lose to Ling Xiao. She could not lose because Zhu Hua, Jie Wu, and Lu Xing had already been eliminated. Ling Xiao only bowed to Master Baiyun and then walked towards the mountain gate. He did not even look at Su Ying. Although Ling Xiao's model allowed him to hide his aura and cultivation realm, his long-term self-confidence still gave him a different feeling. Even Elder Bai couldn't help but take another look at him. Zhao Xi and Zhao Zhi's gazes also focused on Ling Xiao. What kind of potential could such a calm and reserved youth have? Pretentious. Seeing that Ling Xiao had received so much attention before the test, Su Ying was a little unhappy. She did not know that people who had such thoughts were mostly because they did not have confidence in themselves. Ling Xiao walked to the mountain gate and gently patted it. He did not use much strength and did not use his mountain river martial spirit. 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars. It's about time. Ling Xiao's hand was always on the mountain gate. This way he could control his potential. And this, other than him, no one else could do. In fact, the moment his hand touched the mountain gate, the 7-star flower in the mountain river world had already changed. It actually had some kind of connection with the mountain gate and could control the changes of the mountain gate. However, this required him to touch the mountain gate. Otherwise, he could really trick Su Ying. 3 stars, treasure body, pass, 20 points. Her aptitude was the same as that of Northern Han's princess Zhao Xi and Lung Plum. Although she was outstanding, she was far inferior to Ming Tian and Lung Hao. Therefore, it definitely wouldn't attract too much attention. In fact, if Ling Xiao were to display his full potential, this door would probably not be enough. God's jealousy would probably be even worse than Lung Hao's. Precious treasure body. Not bad. But compared to me, it's far from enough. Seeing this result, Su Ying heaved a sigh of relief. Ling Xiao's strength was inferior to hers, and his potential was also inferior to hers. To her, this was absolutely great news. Su Ling was also visibly relieved. No matter what, his relationship with Grandmaster Baiyun was not very harmonious. The relationship between the shinobi clan and the human race wasn't very good. He didn't want Ling Xiao to be a heaven-defying character. Ling Xiao retracted his hand, cupped his hands towards Elder Bai, and then stood on the side of the pass. He obtained 10 points in the first round, 20 points in this round, and 30 points in this round. As long as there were no accidents in the next few rounds, he would be accepted with an average score. Brat, you're only SOSO. After entering the Yuehua School, you want to compete with Ming Tian with this kind of aptitude? You want to compete with us? Coincidentally, the person standing near Ling Xiao was He Suo. He Suo also heaved a sigh of relief. Ling Xiao's cunning and battle prowess were too shocking. He was really afraid that this brat's talent was too heaven-defying. If an elder took a fancy to him, even his master, the flame deity, wouldn't be able to suppress this brat. But now everything was fine. It was just a treasure body, nothing to worry about. One must know that before the expansion, a treasure body was only a passing standard. He Suo, had an immortal treasure body. Ling Xiao's performance was not bad, but it was hard to say that he was outstanding. This made He Sua not suspect anything else. If Ling Zhao's performance was too bad, or even worse than cold plums, He Sua would suspect that there was something fishy about this test. Master Bai Yun had been observing He Sua's expression. When he saw this, he heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed that Ling Xiao had passed this round of concealing his strength and biding his time. Next, he would have to concentrate on his cultivation. Number 2, Su Ying. A voice rang out. Su Ying walked to the front of the mountain gate with a cold expression. Ling Xiao was really not interested in Su Ying. He was just silently thinking about his own matters. After passing this round of potential, he could basically enter the Yuehua school. He was full of expectations for his future. But unlike him, Su Ying's special temperament won the admiration of many young geniuses. Many young men's eyes almost turned into hearts. Buzz, another terrifying sound rang out. An entire mountain gate flickered. Fortunately, there were no thunderclouds this time. This meant that Su Ying's potential was still lacking compared to Lung Hao's. However, even with that being the case, that bright and resplendent light was still able to surpass everyone else. For stars, a total of 4 stars lit up. Although only the soul potential had reached this level, and the other 2 were only about 2 stars, it was already very terrifying. Good. 4 stars, immortal grade, treasure body. Pass. 30 points. Perhaps because of the appearance of a genius like Lung Hao, Elder Bai's reaction was not particularly excited, but one could still see that his face was smiling like a flower. Immortal grade, treasure body. Even before the enrollment expansion, this was the qualification that could easily enter the Yuehua school. Old man Bai Yin, how is it? My daughter is not bad, right? Su Ling looked at Master Bai Yun provocatively and asked, Not bad indeed. But compared to Ming Tian and Zhuo Lung, she's still lacking. Master Bai Yun shook his head. He did not mention Ling Xiao because he also wanted to keep Ling Xiao's secret. Yes, she's lacking compared to Ming Tian and Zhuo Lung. But compared to your proud disciple Ling Xiao, she's much better, right? Su Ling glanced at Ling Xiao, hoping to see shock in Ling Xiao's eyes. But unfortunately, Ling Xiao did not pay attention to the situation here at all. He kept his head down, thinking about his own matters. Humph, this kid really knows how to pretend. Su Ling coldly snorted. This was the only explanation he could give. He would not admit that Ling Xiao disdained Su Ying's talent. Number 1, Zhao Ji. Zhao Ji, the 3rd prince of Northern Han, was an expert at the late 9th level of the martial vein realm. He was only 16 years old. He killed an assassin at the late 9th level of the martial vein realm in 3 moves. From all the signs, this guy's potential was also very shocking. So when they heard his name, the scene suddenly quieted down. Many people wanted to know if this Zhao Ji could also be envied by the heavens like Lung Hao. Even Elder Bai looked at Zhao Ji, seemingly quite expectant. Zhao Ji stood there, raised his right hand, and slapped it. The mountain gate shook, and golden light suddenly appeared. The bright light made many people unable to open their eyes. Compared to Su Ying's scene, this scene was a little better. For stars, it was a little better, but unfortunately it was not 5 stars. Chapter 247. After the end of Zhao Ji's test, the second test was completely over. A total of 68 people passed the test in the end. This number was actually not small. However, Elder Bai did not announce the score ranking, so at present, everyone did not know their specific ranking. But in Ling Zhao's view, those who ranked at the top were nothing more than those few people. Zhao Ji, Su Ying, Cold Plum, and Zhao Ci were definitely not lacking. Including him, their rankings were probably not low. Dai Yuling, follow this senior brother to the Herb Mountain. The rest of you, follow me to the next test. Elder Bai stood up and ordered a female disciple of Yuehua School to take Dai Yuling to the Herb Mountain. It was probably a mountain on Yuehua Mountain. Master, what's the cultivation of the golden light, heavenly master who took Lung Hao away? How is he compared to the flame deity? On the way, Ling Xiao finally could not help but ask. The golden light heavenly master is a high-level powerhouse in the celestial being realm. The flame deity has just reached the celestial being realm. Once you reach the celestial being realm, you almost completely get rid of the body of an ordinary person. From the soul to the body, you are brand new. You can fly without any external help. Master Bai Yun explained. Speaking of this, he could not help but shake his head and smile bitterly. I will never be able to reach the celestial being realm. Under the celestial being realm was the transcendent realm. The transcendent realm was the same as the Marshall Vane realm. However, unlike the Marshall Vane realm where every Marshall Vane realm level opened a Marshall Vane, every time a transcendent realm level crossed a Marshall Vane realm level, there would be a change in the body until it completely got rid of the shackles of the mortal body and reached the celestial being realm. In a sense, the celestial being realm could be said to be a higher level of human beings. They could do things that ordinary people could not do. Things that ordinary people regarded as magical were ordinary to them. Unfortunately, Master Bai Yun had not reached this realm, so he could not explain it clearly. He could only wait for Ling Xiao to explore. All of you stop talking. There are still 2 more tests after this. One is the Mechanical Colossus, and the other is the God Attainment Catalog. All of you better pay attention, because even if you're unable to pass these 2 tests, you might be able to obtain some benefits from them. Elder Bai's voice sounded. However, he only mentioned the names of the last 2 tests, but did not announce the specific content, which made people's imaginations run wild. Ling Xiao's plan was to get full marks if there was a test related to combat or intelligence. That was because there was no need for him to hide. That day he had been able to injure He Suo, which had long since proven that his combat skills were outstanding. The flame deity probably knew about this as well. It was just that within the sect, there was a view that the so-called combat skills below the transcendent realm were of little use. It could only save his life. Therefore, it did not account for much in the assessment, only 10 points. Even if Ling Xiao got full marks, the flame deity probably wouldn't take him seriously. Moreover, it was true that concealing one's strength and biding one's time was not a lie. If one really hid one's strength excessively and was eliminated in the end, that would be too embarrassing. Elder Bai opened the mountain gate, and everyone followed him to a narrow passageway. From here, the passageway was pitch black. It was impossible to know how long the passageway was, let alone what was on the other side of the passageway. Ling Xiao could see that at the end of the passageway, there was a black shadow with a very dangerous aura. The oppressive power of this black shadow was almost equivalent to a peak 9th layer Marshall Vane expert. The content of the 3rd test is very simple. From here to the other side of the passageway, you will encounter some trouble along the way. You can either avoid it or choose to attack. The score is calculated according to the distance you can reach. Elder Bai said indifferently, the passageway is a total of 10 feet long. For every 10 feet you advance, you will get 1 point. If anyone can kill the mechanical giant beast at the end, you'll get an additional 10 points. This rule was simple and clear. There was no need to say more. All right, let's begin. Who's going first? This time, we don't have to follow the order of the number plates. I'll do it. As soon as Elder Bai's voice fell, a young man with a peak 7th layer Marshall Vane cultivation jumped into the dark passageway. His potential was not bad. He had reached 2 stars, which was a fine quality treasure body. However, his strength was really not much. Just as the young man entered the passageway, a white light suddenly shot out in front of him. He did not have time to identify it and was directly blasted out. By the way, if your cultivation is below the 8th layer Marshall Vane, unless you have special abilities, it is normal for you to get 0 points in this test. The young man who was blasted out was not injured, but he seemed very disappointed. As expected, unless your potential was as heaven-defying as Lung Hao's. Strength was also very important. It's my turn. This time the one who rushed in was a young man at the early 8th layer martial vein. His strength was slightly stronger, and his reaction was also more agile. However, when he jumped into the passageway, the expected white light did not appear. Instead, a saber light appeared from the darkness. Clang! The young man panicked and retreated 3 or 4 steps, almost exiting the passageway. Everyone could vaguely see a figure appear in the passageway. However, this figure's entire body was made of steel, and he was waving a long saber in his hand. It was clearly a mechanical puppet. The strength of this mechanical puppet was stronger than the peak 7th layer martial vein, but slightly weaker than the early 8th layer martial vein. This was in line with Elder Bai's words. If a martial artist below the early 8th layer martial vein did not have special abilities, it would be very difficult for them to get a point. After the young man experienced the initial danger, he quickly calmed down. After a battle, he defeated the mechanical puppet and advanced 10 feet. Suddenly, 2 rays of light shot out from the darkness. They clearly flew from the opposite end of the passageway, but their speed was too fast. In an instant, they arrived in front of the young man. Flying sword. Before the young man's body was pierced, he only thought of this and then fainted. You won't die from injuries in the passageway. At most, you will faint. You can rest assured that we are here to take in disciples, not to kill. Elder Bai explained. Their Yuehua school was not a demonic sect, so it was not that bloody. Advance 10 feet and you get 1 point. A genius youth at the early 8th layer martial vein had only advanced 10 feet. This was really lamentable. After that, many people took this test one after another. The danger that appeared every time was different, so whether it was early or late, there was no reference point. Of course, this was only for others. For Ling Xiao, going in later would benefit him a lot. This was because he found that whether it was the mechanical puppet or the strange attacks, the frequency of their appearance was fixed. As long as he could find this pattern, he could easily get full marks in this test without fighting. Young master, I'm going. Before Lung Mei, Zhao Xiai scored the most points in this round, but she only got 5 points. She couldn't go any further than that. Wait a minute. Chapter 248. Ling Xiao was not one of Master Baiyun's companions, so he would not violate the rules no matter what he said. Although he could not help Cold Plum in the potential assessment, it was not too much to give her some pointers in this kind of assessment. After Ling Xiao's guidance, Cold Plum actually managed to obtain a perfect score of 10 points for this level with her cultivation at the early 8th level of the martial vein realm. This caused everyone else to be taken aback. However, who would have thought that Ling Xiao was the one who had contributed the most to this? If it was just Cold Plum herself, she would be able to obtain 5 points. At most, 6 points would be her limit. After Cold Plum, Su Ying and Zhao Ji both successfully obtained full marks for this level. Interestingly, the 2 of them attempted to kill the mechanical beast in the end, but were defeated instead. Feeling that it was about time, Ling Xiao also walked to the front of the tunnel. Master, it shouldn't be a problem for me to get an extra 10 points, right? Ling Xiao asked Master Baiyun before entering the tunnel. Of course there's no problem. Many people know that your combat skills are strong. If your performance is bad, others will be suspicious. However, that mechanical beast is equivalent to a martial artist at the peak of the 9th level of the martial vein realm. Can you really kill it? Master Baiyun was very clear about Ling Xiao's combat strength, but he still had doubts. Ling Xiao did not answer this question. If it was a martial artist at the peak of the 9th level of the martial vein realm, he would definitely not be a match for them. However, the mechanical beast was different. It was a brainless thing. As long as he grasped its weakness, not to mention the peak of the 9th level of the martial vein realm, even if it was the transcendent realm, he might not be afraid. So, Ling Xiao rushed into the tunnel. Then, a scene that shocked everyone appeared. He did not fight with any mechanical puppets. Instead, he walked towards the main point as if he was taking a stroll. It was just that every time an attack appeared, his figure would be a little faster, and he would easily dodge it. Could this kid be a relative of Yuehua school? Why does it feel like he knew about the mechanism in advance? That's right. Otherwise, how could he dodge the attack so easily? Sure. Are you tired of living? How dare you spout such nonsense? You guys are really ignorant. Didn't you guys notice that there was a pattern to those attacks? It's just that even if an ordinary person noticed this pattern, they wouldn't be able to easily dodge it. But this brat could. That's because his movement technique is extremely terrifying. At the very least, it's a transcendent martial art. And it should be called a gold-grade martial art now. Zhao Zhijin looked down on these people. Just because someone performed well, they said that they had connections. What a joke. However, what happened next made even him a little suspicious. After Ling Xiao reached the end of the tunnel, he suddenly stabbed out with his sword. It pierced through the beast's weakest spot, which was the beast's weakest spot. With the central core destroyed, the mechanical behemoth was instantly silenced, turning into a metal lump that could be bullied by anyone. At this moment, Elder Bai's face was filled with astonishment. What frightening judgment! What a terrifying combat technique! It's a pity that this person's potential isn't outstanding. Otherwise, he would definitely be a genius that's hard to come by in 100,000 years. What a pity, what a pity! He believed that the flame deity would think the same. However, that wasn't necessarily the case for He Suo. After all, Ling Xiao had injured He Suo before. It was normal for this fellow to want to harm Ling Xiao. However, Ling Xiao wasn't afraid of He Suo finding trouble with him. After joining the Yuehua school, Ling Xiao believed that he would definitely have more opportunities to improve his strength. As long as he didn't die, he would quickly catch up and even surpass He Suo. Of course, before that, he still had to try his best to avoid a direct confrontation with He Suo. That would be too disadvantageous for him. Successfully traversing Tenjiang and killing the mechanical behemoth. You have scored 20 points for this test. 10 points was the maximum score. Killing the mechanical behemoth would give an additional 10 points. Ling Xiao's score for this test was actually equivalent to making up for his potential points. I can try to rope this fellow in. Zhao Zhijin stroked his chin. As a prince, he had been living in schemes for a long time. Naturally, he was used to trying to rope in Ling Xiao. After all, Ling Xiao's combat skills were too terrifying, at least under the Transcendent Realm. He would definitely be a powerful helper. No wonder he could kill Zhuolong. His combat skills are indeed powerful. Unfortunately, this is the end for him. He might be invincible under the Transcendent Realm, but when he reaches the Transcendent Realm, the gap between him and others is huge. Su Ying wasn't too surprised by Ling Xiao's performance. He already knew that Ling Xiao's combat skills were terrifying. In fact, there were many veteran disciples who had the same opinion as Su Ying. Among these people, even the weakest one had a treasured body. Many of them had an immortal, treasured body. Not only did they not praise Ling Xiao's combat skills, they even felt disdain for him. This was very similar to Master Bai Yun's attitude towards Ling Xiao. After Ling Xiao, many people participated in the challenge. After the mechanical behemoth was destroyed, it was repaired. It didn't take much time. However, the people behind didn't exceed 5 points, not to mention higher. Ling Xiao's estimation wasn't wrong. Among these people, there were only a few who had the potential to increase. Next is the last test, the God Investiture Catalog. Elder Bai led everyone to the underground. This was obviously an ancient ruin. There were many strange pictures engraved on the walls. They were basically people. All right, this test is the same as before. You can go in if you're ready. There's no need to care about the number plate. Elder by stood guard in front of a stone door. Behind the stone door, there was a mysterious and strange aura. Ling Xiao could feel that the mountain river martial spirit seemed to be impatient. However, he wasn't in a hurry. He was a person who didn't want to be reckless. He had the ability to analyze and practice. It was better to observe the performance of the other disciples before making a decision. Those who volunteered would never be in the minority, especially those young geniuses who felt that they had no hope of being accepted. They might as well go in and give it a try. Who knows, they might be able to obtain some benefits. There were people who went in one after another. It felt like after they went in, they quickly came out. When some of the youths came out, they lowered their heads and muttered to themselves. When some of the youths came out, their faces were bitter. There were also some youths who had a face of excitement. The most puzzling thing was that there were people who were brought out by Elder Bai after they fainted. What was inside? Ling Xiao was really looking forward to it. Master Bai Yun didn't want to remind him. Therefore, he could only rely on himself. Cold plum, this time I'll go in first. You can go in after I come out. Ling Xiao decided to go in, first to explore, because he couldn't find any clues from those disciples who had already taken the test. In this case, he could only rely on the mountain river martial spirit to solve the problem. However, he had made some preparations. The first test was clearly about endurance and determination. The second test was about potential. The third test was about battle techniques. In that case, the final test was very likely to test one's perception or soul force. Chapter 249. Ling Xiao took a deep breath and walked through the stone door behind Elder Bai. He discovered that there was actually a completely different world behind the stone door. There was an old man sitting cross-legged here with a small dog lying beside him. He couldn't see through the old man's cultivation, but he was sure that the old man was definitely much stronger than Elder Bai. The old man sat cross-legged in the middle of the circular room. There were murals around him, and all sorts of characters from the primordial era were drawn on them. They were so densely packed that it was impossible to count them. There were people with 3 heads and 6 arms. There were people with wings on their backs. There were people with 3 eyes. There were people with bird heads and human bodies. There were people with monkey heads and monkey brains. In any case, there were simply too many of them. No matter who looked at them, their eyes would be dazzled. These murals are the God Sealing Catalog. Those with high comprehension ability will be able to comprehend some things from them. This is also our test method. The old man calmly said, I'll ask and you'll answer. You have 10 breaths of time to comprehend each question. If you can answer it, you can continue. If you can't, you can leave. 1 point per question. Do you understand? I understand. All right, let's begin then. The first question is, how many people are there in total on the murals? This question was actually very simple for Ling Xiao. Under the soul imprint state, it was something that could be solved in an instant. 365, Ling Xiao answered. The old man's expression was normal because it wasn't difficult to answer the first question. For these 10 questions, it would only get more difficult as one went on. The second question is, how many types of martial arts moves are there in total on the murals? 13,600 types. When he received this answer, Ling Xiao honestly didn't dare to believe it himself. 365 people, but they used 13,600 different moves. How was this possible? However, when he observed carefully, he discovered that the murals were clearly moving. It was just that one's soul had to be strong to a certain extent before they could see them. Not bad. The old man finally glanced at Ling Xiao, as though he was wondering why this brat could answer the questions so quickly. Although the previous youths had also answered the first 2 questions, all of them had used up all the time. The third question is, how many types of props are there in the murals, including weapons, hidden weapons, defensive equipment, and so on? 19,380,000. Ling Xiao blurted out again. Oh, so far, you are the first person to answer this question correctly. Many people before you have forgotten to check the items in the storage rings of the people in the paintings. The old man was even more surprised. This was where the God Seal catalog was miraculous. If one's perception was good enough and their soul force was strong enough, then they would definitely be able to see the items within the storage ring. Only then would they be able to report the true number. To be honest, this still surprised Ling Xiao. These 365 people had more than 10 million items, and the quality of each item was much better than the drifting snow sword in his hand. It was really enviable. Fourth question: how many people are using the fire profound meaning in the painting? This problem had obviously become more difficult, because not only did you have to recognize the Upanishads that these people were using, you also had to see the attribute of their Upanishads. If you didn't have enough comprehension ability, you wouldn't be able to do so. 6. Ling Xiao's reply was as quick as ever. Being able to answer the fourth question correctly caused the old man to be even more surprised. This was because he had always been in charge of the God Seal catalog's test. In the years before the expansion, there were only a few people who could answer the first 4 questions. In any case, there wouldn't be more than 10 people in each test. Fifth question: how many people are using the thunder profound meaning? 25. Ling Xiao's reply was slightly hesitant because the thunder profound meaning was different from the fire profound meaning. The fire profound meaning was more obvious, while the thunder profound meaning was more hidden. He could only wait for the moment the painting moved to find the truth. Pleasant surprise. Absolutely pleasant surprise. The old man's eyes were filled with excitement. Even the small dog lying on the side barked twice. How could he not be excited? In the past, there wouldn't be more than one disciple who could answer the 5th question. Sometimes there wouldn't even be one. Ling Xiao's performance was truly amazing. 6th question: you have to be careful. How many people in the painting have a star martial spirit? This was indeed difficult. Martial spirits were things that couldn't be seen if they weren't used. If he wanted to analyze it, he had to inject his soul force into the painting and then spar with the people in the painting one by one to draw out their martial spirits. This time, Ling Xiao spent a little more time. After about 8 breaths, he suddenly opened his eyes and said, 233. This time, the answer was no longer important to Ling Xiao. He suddenly realized that after he withdrew his soul force, it actually caused a huge change to the mountain river diagram. The original mountain river world only had the earth and no sky because the sky was just a piece of darkness. But this time it was different. At this time, the sun, moon, and stars actually appeared in the sky. He had a feeling that although the mountain river martial spirit hadn't leveled up, it was obviously stronger than before. The fusion rate between his soul and the mountain river martial soul had also increased to 20%. At this moment, Ling Xiao could even feel the old man's fervent expectations for him. He couldn't help but be shocked. Originally, he only wanted to get full marks in this section, but now it seemed that he couldn't continue. If he really got full marks, he was afraid that something would happen. Comprehension wasn't considered a kind of talent, but sometimes it was even more terrifying than talent. Ling Xiao didn't want to cause a stir. It was better to restrain himself a little. With his current score, the first section was full marks. The second section and the third section's additional points could actually be said to be full marks for 2 sections. Even if the third section wasn't full marks, it should be acceptable. In fact, the so-called full marks of 100 in this assessment should be 60 points, because the other 40 points were additional points. Potential plus 20 points, combat skills plus 10 points, comprehension plus 10 points. Currently, only Lung Hao and Ling Xiao had received additional points. And because Lung Hao had already been taken away by the golden light, heavenly sovereign, there was no competition. Ling Xiao could get 56 points, which was definitely enough to be accepted. Even if only 3 or 4 people were accepted, he was definitely qualified. Thus, there was really no need to be ostentatious. Thinking of this, when the old man asked the 7th question, Ling Xiao simply said that he didn't know. Although he said that he didn't know, in fact, he used 10 breaths of time to comprehend the mural again and actually gained a lot. The profoundness of this mural was more exquisite than the profoundness of transcendent realm warriors. Because of this, he actually instantly comprehended the 3rd move of the Snow Lotus Sword art, Congealing Water, and the 4th move, Ice Heart. This speed made Ling Xiao feel that it was very unbelievable. Chapter 250. The 3rd move of the Snow Lotus Sword art, Congealing Water, was a move that could freeze everything. Its speed might not be as fast as the 1st move, and it did not have a force field, but its terrifying freezing power could end the enemy. The 4th move of the Snow Lotus Sword art, Icy Heart. To be precise, this move should be one of the auxiliary moves of the 5 moves. When using this move, all the true essence in the body would be transformed into ice energy. In this case, the power of all the other 4 moves of the Snow Lotus Sword art would be increased by at least 1 to 10 times, which was really terrifying, especially once the 5th move was mastered. It could be said to be as terrifying as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Of course, the greater the power, the greater the consumption. Therefore, the process of using this move still depended on Ling Xiao's precise control. Otherwise, if he couldn't kill the enemy after using all his true essence, he would die. Of course, all these changes were not noticed by the old man. He only heard that Ling Xiao couldn't answer the 7th question and was obviously a little disappointed. However, he quickly returned to normal. That was because if he could even answer the 7th question, this kid could really be called a peerless monster. The old man even suspected that Ling Xiao was not human. Fortunately, Ling Xiao stopped answering crazily in time. Otherwise, it would really cause a big disturbance. Junior can leave now, right? Ling Xiao stood up and was about to leave. Since the test was over, there were still other people coming. He couldn't keep taking up time here. Wait a moment. The old man stopped Ling Xiao and said, Kid, this old man has been in charge of the God Investiture catalog test for many years. In the Yuehua school, I am not a big shot, but I still have some strength. I don't know if you are interested in cultivating with this old man? Huh. Ling Xiao did not expect this at all. He thought that this kind of good luck would not fall on his head, but he didn't expect it to be waiting here. The trouble now was that he could feel that this old man's cultivation was not as good as Golden Light Skymaster, which was similar to Elder Bai. With such a backer, he was afraid that the flame deity would not be able to suppress him. If he followed this person, it would be troublesome. If this old man had a good character and was willing to protect him, then he would have been killed by the flame deity. If this old man's character wasn't good, and he heard that he had offended the flame deity, then following this old man would be even more troublesome. So no matter what, he really couldn't leave with this old man today. Thinking of this, he already had a plan in mind. He cupped his hands and bowed. Thank you for your kind intentions, Senior. However, my aptitude is too poor, and my temperament is dull. I'm afraid I'm not suitable to be Senior's disciple. If Senior has any needs, please don't hesitate to tell me. Even if I'm not your disciple, I'm still willing to serve you. These words could be considered appropriate. He was not willing to be a disciple, but he was willing to help. If the old man was still holding a grudge, then he was probably a narrow-minded person. There was no point in taking such a person as a master. On the contrary, it indirectly proved that Ling Xiao's approach was correct. If the old man didn't hold a grudge, then Ling Xiao would interact more with this old man. Even if he didn't rely on him, at least he could build a good relationship with him. There would always be a time when he would be useful. The other party treated him with sincerity, so he would naturally treat the other party with sincerity. Well, Everyone has their own aspirations. This old man was indeed a little abrupt today. However, after you join the sect, you can slowly interact with him. Maybe you'll change your mind? Although the old man was a little disappointed, he wasn't angry and just smiled. It was just that these words clearly expressed that he wasn't willing to give up such a good disciple. Ling Xiao didn't dislike this kind of person. The old man looked up to him because he really thought well of him. If he hadn't offended the flame deity, he would have really agreed. After all, joining a sect and having such an old man to help him was definitely not a bad thing. If Junior wants to choose a master, he will definitely choose Senior. Ling Xiao cupped his hands and was about to leave. After taking 2 steps, he suddenly stopped and said, "Senior, can Junior stay a little longer?" He had just comprehended the 3rd and 4th moves of the Snow Lotus sword art and knew how powerful the God Sealing Catalog was. Therefore, he wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to obtain some benefits. Even if he couldn't completely comprehend the 5th move, obtaining some understanding of the rules of martial arts was also good. This God Sealing Catalog was simply an encyclopedia of martial arts. It was a pity that not everyone could understand it unless their soul was strong and their perception was outstanding. The higher one's perception, the greater the benefits they would obtain. Sure, the old man smiled and said, right now he wanted to accept Ling Xiao as his disciple. Therefore, there were some things that he would naturally try his best to satisfy Ling Xiao. However, he didn't know that what Ling Xiao wanted to do would definitely shock him. Ling Xiao's idea was to see if the Mountain River martial spirit could directly copy the God Sealing Catalog. In this way, he could comprehend the mysteries of martial arts from the God Sealing Catalog at any time. This was too helpful. Earlier, because of the urgency of time, he didn't do so. But now he could give it a try. Just as Ling Xiao was attempting to copy the God Sealing Catalog, Elder Bai walked in. They were clearly at the same cultivation level, but Elder Bai was actually very respectful to this old man. Elder Yang, is his test not over yet? The people outside are all waiting. Elder Bai lowered his head and asked respectfully, "Let them wait. Also, without my permission. You can't come in without permission. This is against the rules." Elder Yang glanced at Elder Bai and said in a dignified manner. Elder Bai glanced at Ling Xiao awkwardly. He was puzzled. Although Ling Xiao's combat skills were strong, his potential could only be considered below average. Why was Elder Yang so concerned about him? Although he was puzzled, he still retreated. Strictly speaking, he really couldn't casually enter this room. It was only because he had waited outside for too long that he was afraid that something would happen. "It's done." Ling Xiao realized that as long as he increased the input of his soul force and circulated the Mountain River martial spirit, he could instantly copy the God Sealing Catalog into the Mountain River world. At this moment, there was an additional building in the small town of the Mountain River world. It was an underground building, and the interior was exactly the same as this room. "Senior, this Junior can do it. I can't let others wait for too long." Ling Xiao's words were truly shameless. He had already gotten what he wanted. If he didn't leave, what was he waiting for? "Kid, don't be too anxious. This God Sealing Catalog isn't that easy to comprehend. If you like, you can come once a month." Elder Yang said with a smile. Ling Xiao nodded. He thought to himself, "Although you are indeed good to me, it's a pity that I don't need this benefit anymore." Of course, although he had obtained the God Sealing Catalog, there were some things that he couldn't solve by himself. In the future, he would have to look for Elder Yang. Chapter 251. Old man, you're already a half-step celestial venerable, but this little guy looks down on you." Just after Ling Xiao left, the puppy actually spoke in human language. It was obviously mocking Elder Yang. "Half-step celestial venerable. The master this kid wants is a celestial venerable." Elder Yang sighed and said it's a pity. His comprehension is too terrifying. He could at least answer the 7th question, but he deliberately didn't answer question in the end. I guess he must have some enemies, so he doesn't dare to be too arrogant. The puppy nodded and said, well, that should be the case. His enemy is probably a celestial venerable from our Yuehua school. Why don't you take him as your disciple? Elder Yang suddenly looked at the puppy and said, forget it. My standards for taking disciples are very high. Although his performance is eye-catching and his comprehension is very high, I still need to observe him for a while. You also know that when I choose disciples, the most important thing is their character. The puppy looked like an expert, and its words were also very dignified. That's true. Anyway, there's still a long way to go. There's no rush, no rush. Elder Yang smiled and looked out the door. At this time, Ling Xiao had already walked to the hall outside. Everyone looked at him a little strangely. It was because he had been in there for the longest time, but he didn't get a full score. According to the score announced by Elder Bai, Ling Xiao only got 6 points. Although it was the highest score so far, how could it take so long? Ling Xiao didn't care about what they thought. Anyway, he roughly told Cold Plum about his experience inside. Of course, he skipped some things. He hoped that it would be of some help to Cold Plum. However, when Cold Plum came out, she told him that all the questions had been changed. However, Ling Xiao's words still played a certain role. Cold Plum got 4 points in this round, which was not bad. Among the other people who did well, Su Ying and Zhao Ji both got 6 points, which showed that the two of them were still good at comprehending. Zhao Xi got 3 points. Elder Yang didn't mention taking Su Ying or Zhao Ji as his disciple, which made Ling Xiao a little worried, because this meant that Elder Yang had already seen that he deliberately didn't answer the 7th question. However, even though he was worried, he had no enmity with Elder Yang. Moreover, from the exchange just now, it was quite good. Elder Yang probably wouldn't publicize this matter. What's more, Elder Yang wanted to take him in as a disciple, so he definitely wouldn't reveal the secret. Otherwise, wouldn't his disciple be easily snatched away? After the 4th assessment, the Yuehua School's enrollment test was officially over. According to Elder Bai, this time, Yuehua School only recruited 10 students each time. This time, because of the expansion, they directly recruited the top 30 students. Even if Dai Yuling and Lung Hao had already taken 2 spots, there were still 28 spots left. Ling Xiao shrugged his shoulders helplessly. He was afraid that he wouldn't be accepted. If he was ranked 28th, there wouldn't be a problem. However, while he was relieved, more than half of the people present were trembling with fear. There were still 68 people left here. First place, Ling Xiao, 56 points. Although Ling Xiao got first place, most of his points were from his combat skills, so no one thought that he was that great. Instead, Zhao Ji, who got 2nd place, and Su Ying, who got 3rd place, got the most attention. His first place was probably the most worthless first place in the entire competition. Cold Plum got 4th place, and Zhao Xi got 5th place. Ling Xiao didn't pay attention to the rest at all, so he didn't care too much about their rankings. For Master Bai Yin, it was really a surprise that all 3 of his recommended candidates were selected to enter the sect. He was originally worried that Dai Yuling and Cold Plum wouldn't be accepted, but it turned out that Dai Yuling had other opportunities. Cold Plum's potential was much better than he had imagined. As a master, he was really a little unqualified. Not bad, old Bai Yin. Your disciple actually got 1st place in the entrance test. Do you want to hold a banquet to celebrate? Su Ling said with a laugh. It was obvious that his words were full of sarcasm. Among the 3 people he brought, only Su Ying was selected, and she only got 3rd place in the end. But in terms of potential, Su Ying had an immortal grade treasure body, which was far better than Ling Xiao's treasure body. She was a real talent that could be cultivated. In other words, no matter what the current ranking was, his daughter would become an elite in the sect in the future, and Ling Xiao would gradually dim until no one cared about him. Master Bai Yin just smiled and didn't reply, because he knew clearly that Ling Xiao's true potential was definitely not worse than Su Ying's. The list of 28 people was soon out. Including Lung Hao and Dai Yuling, there were a total of 30 people. Although some people were not convinced by Dai Yuling, the problem was that there was no martial artist with a healing-type martial soul. Not to mention that Dai Yuling's martial path remnant soul had been perfected to 80%. So they had nothing to complain about. This was the final result. Speaking of which, among the 30 people, Lung Hao was the most outstanding one. Next were Zhao Ji and Su Ying. Both of them had immortal grade treasure bodies. If nothing unexpected happened, they would soon become the best of the outer sect disciples, and then be promoted to the inner sect. After them were Ling Xiao, Zhao Xi, and Cold Plum. However, most people directly ignored Ling Xiao, not because they hated him, but because he was a man. Zhao Xi was the princess of Northern Han. She was dignified, elegant, and lovable. Cold Plum was beautiful and cold. Although she was not good at dressing up, she had a unique style and was still sought after by many people. After all, in the Yuehua school, there were more men than women. On the same day, the Yuehua school gave the 30 new disciples 2 hours to say goodbye to the elders and masters who had accompanied them. Ling Xiao, Dai Yuling, and Cold Plum reluctantly said goodbye to Grandmaster Baiyun. Grandmaster Baiyun promised Ling Xiao that he would look for the divine sword sect after returning and help guard it. This was also something he had promised Ling Xiao ever since the Blue Eyes race invaded the Baiyun province. Ling Xiao had been very worried about the divine sword sect. That was his home, his family. Afterwards, Lung Hao returned to Golden Light, Exalted Celestial, and Dai Yuling returned to her mountain. The other 28 people followed Elder Bai to the outer sect main hall to register their ranks. Elder Bai was one of the outer sect elders. Ling Xiao did not know that the outer sect was actually very important in the Yuehua school. The Yuehua school's daily life was inseparable from the outer sect, including the purchase of food, medicine, and equipment. It even included the management of worldly affairs. It really was inseparable from the outer sect. In addition to cultivation, the outer sect disciples were also responsible for these chores, especially now that the taboos of the 12 sects had been abolished. Their connections with the outside world would become increasingly close, and the outer sect disciples would probably have even more matters to attend to. After registering at the outer sect main hall, Elder Bai informed the new disciples of the sects rules one by one. At this moment, Elder Bai no longer had the cold expression from before. He looked more like a capable shopkeeper. Chapter 252. Speaking of the Yuehua school's forbidden area, the most eye-catching thing was the towering Moonlight Pagoda. Looking from the outer sect's main hall, the Moonlight Pagoda became even clearer. However, most of the pagoda towered into the clouds, so it was impossible to see it clearly. No one knew how many floors it had. According to Elder Bai, the Moonlight Pagoda was a treasure of the Yuehua school's primordial sect master, the Moonlight Goddess. It was also the foundation of the Yuehua school. It could absorb the moonlight and stabilize the Yuehua school's providence. Even Elder Bai didn't know how many floors the Moonlight Pagoda had. Other than the Moonlight Goddess, no one else had been able to climb to the top of this mysterious pagoda. Even the current Yuehua school's sect master couldn't do it. When Ling Xiao looked at the Moonlight Pagoda in his soul immersion state, he could clearly feel a mysterious ancient aura coming from the pagoda. His mountain river martial soul actually had a feeling that it wanted to devour the Moonlight Pagoda. Be good, don't act recklessly. Otherwise, I'll be finished. Ling Xiao hurriedly suppressed the impulse of his mountain river martial soul. In his opinion, since his mountain river martial soul wanted to devour the Moonlight Pagoda, it most likely meant that the Moonlight Pagoda wasn't a treasure, but a martial soul. The Moonlight Goddess, martial soul. All right, the registration is done. Next, I'll bring you to the outer sect disciples' residence. Actually, although the outer sect disciples didn't have much status in the Yuehua school, they were still quite important. Therefore, the place they lived in wasn't as shabby as Ling Xiao had imagined. Although the place wasn't big, the windows were clean and everything was complete. Furthermore, there were 4 people in a stone house, so it was quite comfortable. It was just that it might not be convenient for cultivation. However, there was basically no need to worry about cultivation. Cultivating in the Yuehua school was naturally different from cultivating in the secular world. Normally, they would choose to cultivate in the mountains with abundant heaven and earth spirit chi. Furthermore, there were also disciples or elders who opened up cave abodes in the mountains. It would be best if he could have his own cave abode. After arranging the accommodations for Ling Xiao and the other new outer sect disciples, Elder Bai left. He still had his own matters to attend to. Naturally, it was impossible for him to accompany these new disciples. Anyway, when the time came, there would be someone in charge of assigning duties and tasks to the new disciples. As an outer sect elder, he didn't have to worry about it. He didn't know if he should say that Ling Xiao was lucky or unlucky. In his stone house, there was actually an old disciple called Wu Xiang. It was said that because this person's cultivation aptitude was not good, no one was willing to live with him. In the end, he came out alone. Due to the expansion of the recruitment this time, the stone house was obviously a little tight. It was unlikely that they would let him live in a stone house alone, so they arranged for 3 new disciples to live together. The other 2 were the 2 princes of northern Han, second prince Zhao Ting and third prince Zhao Ji, an old disciple and 2 princes. Both of them could be considered big shots. Ling Xiao could not help but shake his head. However, he quickly put this matter to the back of his mind. He came to Yuehua school to improve his strength. He didn't have the time to care about such things. Before that old man Bai Yun left, he had made a promise to him. Old man Bai Yun would take care of the divine sword sect. He would help Bai Yun rescue his daughter. A man's promise was worth 1,000 gold. Moreover, this was a fair exchange. He had no reason to slack off. With old man Bai Yun protecting his grandfather Hong Qi and brother Ling Luo, he could be at ease. In the sect, transcendence didn't seem like much. However, in the secular world, transcendents were still powerful enough to make one's hair stand on end. Even if this exchange was excluded, he still wanted to improve his strength as soon as possible. He had no parents since he was young. Grandfather Hong Qi had never told him what his parents did. He only said that they were dead. However, even if they were dead, he still wanted to know the identity of his parents and how they died. And this required him to become even stronger. Otherwise, it would be impossible. Moreover, in this vast world of sects, there were countless capable people. Powerhouses were as common as clouds, and geniuses were as common as trees in a forest. The young him was really excited and longed for it. When Ling Xiao heard He Sua say that his master, Grandmaster Bai Yun, was one of the weakest outer disciples of Yuehua school, he thought that all the old outer disciples of Yuehua school were transcendents. However, after asking Wu Xiang, he realized that this was not the truth. Wu Xiang was a bit slow and timid, but he was very amiable. He helped Zhao Ting and Zhao Ji make their beds. Then he chatted with Ling Xiao. As for the 2 princes, they were nowhere to be found. The royal family of Northern Han and Yuehua school were inextricably linked. Ling Xiao didn't want to delve too deeply into it. After all, it was their resources. What they wanted to do with it was none of his business. So your master is Grandmaster Bai Yun. Wu Xiang sighed and said, Actually, there is a rule in the Yuehua sect. Inner sect disciples who can't break through to the heaven realm by the age of 100 will be sent back to the outer sect to do some mundane things. Master Bai Yun is such a person, but he is definitely not the worst among the outer sect disciples. After all, once an outer sect disciple reaches the transcendence realm, he can automatically become an inner sect disciple. So that's how it is. Ling Xiao roughly understood He Sua's words that day. He was just mocking old man Bai Yun. Bai Yun couldn't explain it. After all, being sent back from the inner sect to the outer sect was more shameful. Then the strongest in the outer sect is a half-step grandmaster? Ling Xiao asked. The so-called grandmaster was an honorific for transcendence. It was the same reason why heaven realm cultivators were called heavenly venerables. A half-step grandmaster was naturally much stronger than an ordinary peak ninth layer martial vein cultivator. However, they couldn't break through to transcendence. That's right. Among the outer sect disciples, there are 30 half-step grandmasters. As for peak ninth layer martial masters, there are more than 100. This is because there was a limit to the number of disciples. In the future, there will be more outstanding disciples. Wu Xiang nodded his head and said, when you reach the outer sect, you have to be careful. After all, there are no outer sect disciples whose cultivation is below the 9th level martial vein. The worst is at the late 9th level martial vein, just like me. Senior brother, don't be discouraged. You are only in your 30s. There is still a long way to go. There will always be opportunities. Ling Xiao didn't know how to comfort Wu Xiang. He could only say some polite words. Wu Xiang smiled and didn't say anything. However, there was no spirit in his eyes. It was obvious that his spirit had been worn down. Something happened. Suddenly, someone barged in from outside and shouted at Ling Xiao, Brother Ling, you're with that Leng Mei, right? She's been targeted by someone. It's Tian Chao, who's ranked 50th in the outer court. Ling Xiao knew this person. He was in the same batch of disciples. They had chatted a little before. He was an extrovert. Tian Chao. Wu Xiang heard the name and was about to explain it to Ling Xiao. However, he found that an afterimage had already rushed out of the door. This is bad. To be honest, Wu Xiang had a very good impression of Ling Xiao. After Zhao Ji and Zhao Ting learned that he was the last in the outer sect, they disdained him. Chapter 253. Ling Zhao's attitude towards Wu Xiang was different from that of Zhao Ji and Zhao Ting. Even though he knew that Wu Xiang was ranked last among the foreign disciples, he was still very polite and respectful. This made Wu Xiang feel a little warm. Even if he didn't help, he didn't want something to happen to Ling Xiao as soon as he arrived at the Yuehua school. So he chased after him. Tian Chao, who was ranked 50th in the outer sect, was at the peak of the 9th level martial vein. He was definitely very powerful. In his opinion, Ling Xiao was at most at the peak of the 8th level martial vein. How could he fight with an expert of this level? He would definitely be at a disadvantage, so he had to stop Ling Xiao. However, Ling Xiao's movement technique was too terrifying. By the time he arrived at the scene, Ling Xiao was already standing in front of Cold Plum, blocking Tian Chao. Why are you so nervous? I didn't plan to do anything. It's just that my clothes are torn, and I want this junior sister to help me mend them. Tian Chao looked at Ling Xiao and said with a smile. Then he took off his clothes and deliberately made a tear. My sister is clumsy and doesn't know anything about needlework. Why don't I do it for you? Ling Xiao said with a smile. You. Tian Chao sneered and said, You can do it, but the tear on my clothes seems to be very big. As he spoke, Tian Chao tore his clothes again and threw them to Ling Xiao. While the clothes were still in the air, Ling Xiao suddenly slapped them with his palm. The clothes immediately turned into powder. Kid, what are you doing? Tian Chao's eyes widened as he shouted. I'm just dealing with a piece of trash. Ling Xiao said indifferently. Although Cold Plum wasn't injured this time, the other party's provocation was very obvious. He said that he would hide his strength and bide his time, but there was no need for that under the Transcendent Realm. His fighting skills were already very strong. This was something that both He Su Ah and the Flame Deity knew. What was the point of hiding it? Kid, you're really tired of living. Tian Chao swung his fist, but he was stopped by someone. Junior brother Tian, it's so boring to bully a new disciple. I'll just get him to compensate you for your clothes. The one who blocked Tian Chao was Wu Xiang. Compensate. Tian Chao suddenly grinned and said, "That's good too. My clothes are made from the best silk in the Sky Dragon continent. It's worth at least 1,000 low-grade spirit stones. I'll give you 1 day to prepare. If you can't pay, then don't blame me for being impolite." After saying that, he glanced at Wu Xiang, and a hint of fear flashed in his eyes. Then he turned around and left. Ling Xiao smiled bitterly in his heart. "Senior brother, I was just looking for someone to spar with to see how good the outer disciples of the Yuehua school are. Why did you have to interfere?" Although he thought so in his heart, Wu Xiang had good intentions after all, so it was inappropriate for him to say anything more. He only cupped his fists and thanked him. "There's no need to thank me. However, he said that it's 1,000 low-grade spirit stones. If junior brother doesn't have them, I can help you pay for it first." Wu Xiang said 1,000 low-grade spirit stones were very precious in the secular world. In fact, it was also very precious in the eyes of the outer disciples of the Yuehua school. After all, Wu Xiang had done many tasks and saved up for a year, but he had only accumulated 3,000 low-grade spirit stones. If it were not for the fact that he wanted to make friends with Ling Xiao, he would not have lent it to him. "Senior brother Wu, thank you for your kindness, but there's no need for that." Ling Xiao waved his hand and said, "You have it. I don't have that many low-grade spirit stones. I just don't want to give it to you. Senior brother, you don't have to worry about this. I know what I'm doing." Ling Xiao actually had 1,000 low-grade spirit stones, but he did not want to show his wealth. His words made many of the new disciples break out in cold sweat for him. Tian Chao had always had a habit of bullying the new disciples. Other than Cold Plum, the others had also been harassed. A few of the new disciples had even been seriously injured by Tian Chao. Anyway, as long as they did not die or become disabled, it was not a violation of the rules. This was a bit similar to the latent dragon camp. They knew how terrifying Tian Chao was. More than a dozen 8th-level martial vein martial masters could not even last 3 moves against Tian Chao. Of course, this was also partly because Zhao Ji, Su Ying, and Zhao Ci were not present. Cold Plum and Ling Xiao did not make a move. Even so, Tian Chao's strength was very terrifying. Ling Xiao also knew this. He even felt that Tian Chao's strength should be at the same level as the General of the 9 Moons, or maybe even stronger. After all, it was too difficult for the General of the 9 Moons to learn a gold-grade martial art, but Tian Chao could learn it casually. The gap in cultivation was narrowed by the martial art. If Tian Chao were to go to the mortal world, most of the martial masters at the peak of the 9th level of the martial vein would not be his match. Only Lin Zhe, Wan Ben, and the master of the Baiyun Monastery would be able to win against him, and it would definitely be a tragic victory. This was the advantage of being in a sect. Of course, this was only for other martial artists. Ling Xiao, who had the mountain and river martial spirit, was not afraid of Tian Chao. "Senior brother Wu, if you are free, why don't you take us around the outer sect? For example, the outer sect's library or something like that. Do you have it?" Ling Xiao quickly put Tian Chao's matter aside. Now that he was out, he wanted to take the time to familiarize himself with the outer sect's environment. It would be convenient for him to do anything in the future. The Yuehua School's library is called the Moon Pavilion. It is divided into the outer sect's Moon Pavilion, the inner sect's Moon Pavilion, and the core sect's Moon Pavilion. I will take you around first. Then we will go to the outer sect's Moon Pavilion. Wu Xiang was very enthusiastic. He had nothing to do anyway. In the past, when no one paid attention to him, he would cultivate alone in boredom. Now that Ling Xiao was willing to be friends with him, he was quite happy. Wu Xiang first took Ling Xiao and Cold Plum around to familiarize themselves with the terrain before heading to the outer sect's Moon Pavilion. "Cold Plum, what's wrong with you?" On the way to the outer sect's Moon Pavilion, they passed by a valley. Cold Plum suddenly stopped, her face very dignified. This made Ling Xiao a little worried. It should be the murderous aura that entered her body. Wu Xiang explained, about 100,000 years ago, this valley was a battlefield. I once read in a book that a foreign killer killed 1,000 masters of the Yuehua school in this valley, causing the murderous aura here to fill the sky. There is actually such a terrifying person. His strength is actually not strong, but his martial arts are too strange. Wu Xiang shook his head and said, "It's a pity that the records in the book are not clear. Otherwise, I really want to know what kind of master he is." "Gongzi, I'm fine." Cold Plum glanced at the valley and smiled. Ling Xiao didn't suspect anything. After all, Cold Plum's cultivation is not as good as his. It is very likely that she was disturbed by the murderous aura. What he doesn't know is that Cold Plum is very anxious now. She has been saved by him repeatedly, which makes Cold Plum feel happy and very annoyed. After all, the purpose of Cold Plum following Ling Xiao is not to rely on Ling Xiao, but to help Ling Xiao. Chapter 254. Ling Xiao and the Other, 2, quickly arrived at the Outer Sec's moon tower. The name was different, but it was similar to the Ling family's library. The only difference was that there were more ancient books inside, and there were no incomplete secular martial arts. The worst of them were quasi-transcendent martial arts, and there were many other transcendent martial arts. They could be studied at will, and there was no time limit or status restriction. As long as you were an outer sect disciple of the Yuehua school, you could study them. In the secular world, quasi-transcendent martial arts were the absolute arts that many martial artists dreamed of, not to mention transcendent martial arts. They were like the stars in the sky, difficult to reach. Unless one was extremely talented and had a transcendent master, it was impossible to come into contact with more transcendent martial arts. Of course, here, transcendent martial arts were called gold martial arts, but they were the same in nature. Gold, jade, immortal, divine. These were the grades of martial arts outside the secular world. Oh, right, apart from the 4 grades of gold, jade, immortal, and divine, each grade is further divided into 4 grades: entry, rare, superior, and peak. You should know this, right? Wu Xiang was considerate enough to even explain such basic matters. "I've heard about it from Master." Ling Xiao and Cold Plum nodded. At this moment, Ling Xiao was clear that his heavenly dragon golden body was a superior gold grade martial art. This also confirmed his previous thoughts that it was not unreasonable for the golden sky dragon body to be so powerful. The gold grade martial arts that he had encountered before were all gold grade entry-level martial arts, which were of a different grade from his martial arts. How could they defeat him? After parting ways with Wu Xiang, Ling Xiao went to look through the gold martial arts in the moon tower alone. After entering the sect, he realized that there was a reason why there were no gold martial arts manuals in the secular world. There were only profound martial arts manuals. Most secular martial artists were unable to organize these profound martial arts manuals, and even if they did, they would not easily leak them. But it was different in the sect. There were as many experts in the sect as there were clouds in the sky. Gold-grade martial arts profundities were nothing at all. After they had comprehended them and organized them into martial arts secret manuals, it was an extremely simple matter. Therefore, the gold-grade martial arts that he saw now were all in the form of secret manuals and not the profound stone tablets. The gold-grade martial arts in the Outer Sec's moon tower were all entry-level. Actually, he didn't care for them because he heard from Old Man Bai Yun that after becoming an inner sect disciple, he would be able to obtain better gold-grade martial arts. However, he still copied all of these entry-level gold-grade martial arts. He didn't want to use it as a trump card. Instead, he wanted to use it to increase the levels of Cloud Dragon Divine Travel and Ox Demon Art. Right now, Cloud Dragon Divine Travel was a gold-grade entry-level movement technique. As for the Ox Demon Arts, it was still stuck in the ranks of peak grade martial arts. He needed to feed it some gold grade martial arts. This way, it would definitely be able to rise to the ranks of gold grade martial arts. After copying them, Ling Xiao no longer paid attention to these martial arts secret manuals. Instead, he went to another place. The so-called miscellaneous books were books that weren't martial arts. They included astronomy, geography, and so on. They were all knowledge related to this mystic world. Ling Xiao believed that while increasing his strength, he also needed to broaden his horizons as much as possible. Otherwise, he would only be a frog at the bottom of a well if he remained stagnant. He didn't notice that Cold Plum had already quietly left the Moon Tower. Cold Plum returned to her residence and packed her luggage. Then she left a note for Ling Xiao. She didn't have the courage to say goodbye to Ling Xiao face to face. She was afraid that she wouldn't be able to part with him, because there weren't many female disciples. She lived alone in a stone house. She wasn't afraid that the note would be taken away by others. After leaving the stone house, she ran straight towards the valley that she passed by earlier. The killing intent there made her feel very familiar. She believed that the killing intent would only be beneficial to her and not harmful. Turning her head to look in the direction of the outer sect's Moon Tower, she muttered to herself, "Young master, wait for me!" Then she leapt down into the valley. Within the valley, a huge black shadow suddenly flew up and completely swallowed her. Ling Xiao didn't know what happened to Cold Plum. He was still focused on reading the book. There was a book that recorded the ancient cultivation system, which made Ling Xiao feel like he had obtained a treasure. He had always known about the 9th level of the martial vein and the transcendent realm. Later, he learned from Master Bai Yun that the martial vein realm was from the transcendent realm to the celestial realm. However, from this book, he found that he was really quite ignorant. It turned out that the cultivation realm was far more than what he knew. The path of cultivation was divided into the martial vein realm, the transcendent realm, the celestial realm, the grotto realm, the yin-yang realm, the reincarnation realm, the human immortal realm, and the true immortal realm. There were a total of 8 realms. He thought that the flame deity's celestial realm was already ridiculously powerful, but now it seemed that he was really a frog in a well. If he hadn't read this book, he wouldn't have known this. According to the book, the strongest person on the heavenly dragon continent was a celestial realm expert. After that, unless it was a hidden expert, there were no stronger people. Therefore, the Yuehua school's records were blank as to what the realm above the celestial realm was. The Yuehua school was one of the 12 sects on the heavenly dragon continent. It was a super powerful sect. If they didn't have it, the other sects probably didn't either. It seemed that if he wanted to know about the realm above the celestial realm, he would have to leave the heavenly dragon continent. However, the book also said that in the ancient times, the realm above the celestial realm did exist. There were even experts who cultivated to the true immortal realm. However, true immortal realm experts were very rare even in the ancient times. Even the founder of the Yuehua school, the Moonlight Fairy, was only an expert in the immortal realm. Closing the book, Ling Xiao took a deep breath and put this matter aside for now. Then he went to read about the local customs of the heavenly dragon continent. Just like that, he spent several hours reading. Junior brother Ling, Cold Plum is missing. Just as Ling Xiao was immersed in the sea of knowledge, Wu Xiang came to him anxiously and said that Cold Plum was missing. Hearing this, Ling Xiao frowned. He hurriedly put down the book in his hand and went to Cold Plum's residence. The door was not locked. There was a note on the table that was pressed down by an inkstone. "Young master, Cold Plum originally wanted to protect you, but she became a burden to you. So, she wants to go out and improve her strength. Don't worry, I've found a suitable place to cultivate. Don't worry, Cold Plum." There weren't many words on the note, but the meaning was clear. Sigh. In fact, Ling Xiao had been worried for a long time. However, he didn't know how to persuade Cold Plum. This girl was also very stubborn. It was fine as long as nothing happened to her. In the past, in order to test Cold Plum's potential, Ling Xiao dripped a drop of blood into the 7-star flower in his mountain river world. This created a special connection between him and the refrigerant. Although he couldn't determine Cold Plum's location, if something happened to Cold Plum, he would be the first to sense it. Chapter 255. It's good that nothing happened. Ling Xiao took a deep breath. He did not intend to look for Cold Plum. That girl could still survive after becoming a slave. He really did not need to worry too much about her. More importantly, Lung Mei was the same as Ling Yixue. Both of them had better choices and were going to improve their strength. Why should he stop them? Since they were fated, they would meet again. He thought for a moment, crushed the note into powder, then turned and walked out of Cold Plum's room. At the same time, in He Sua's cave, outer sect disciple Tian Chao was being lectured. Tian Chao, I just received news that Cold Plum has disappeared. You can take this opportunity to find trouble with Ling Xiao. Just say that he hid Cold Plum. This is a betrayal of the sect. If he does not hand her over, you will have the opportunity to deal with him. He Sua lightly said, your previous method of finding fault was too stupid. It is called making trouble without reason. If we want to find trouble, we have to find a legitimate reason. Otherwise, it will be hard to explain in front of that meddling elderby. Listening to senior brother's words, Tian Chao suddenly saw the sun. Tian Chao flattered. Okay, you go immediately. This kind of opportunity is rare. Because of my special identity, it is not good for me to make a move on that brat in the sect. I will leave this matter to you. Senior brother, you're being too polite. Your business is my business. Tian Chao mischievously smiled. After saying goodbye to He Sua, he turned and left. He really did not expect to make a fortune this time. He Sua said that as long as he could cripple Ling Xiao and make him unable to cultivate in peace, he could get 10 high-grade true elemental dawn and 10 middle-grade spirit stones. This was too precious. As an outer sect disciple, he was only eligible to obtain middle-grade and low-grade true elemental dawn. High-grade true elemental dawn were simply not eligible, although he could obtain middle-grade spirit stones. It would be good if he could get 10 of them in a year. Such a small matter could make him a year's income. How could he not be happy? However, Tian Chao did not know that his deal with He Sua had already been discovered by Ling Xiao. After Ling Xiao came out of Cold Plum Stone House, he looked around with soul immersion. He couldn't find Cold Plum, but he accidentally found Tian Chao and He Sua's deal. He sneered in his heart. Originally, if you, Tian Chao, were just someone who liked to look for trouble, then I would just teach you a lesson. But now that you're in cahoots with He Sua, then I'm sorry, I won't let you off easily. He was not interested in continuing to observe the two of them. Instead, he turned his attention to the valley that was filled with murderous aura. That was the last place where Cold Plum's aura disappeared. He believed that Cold Plum was in the valley. This surprised him. This was because the murderous aura in the valley had already condensed into some intelligent, non-human life forms. Even Heaven-tier elites would find it difficult to enter, but Cold Plum was able to enter unscathed? This was truly strange. However, he didn't think too much about it. In this world, everyone had their own opportunities. It just depended on whether they could grasp them. He, Ling Xiao, obtained the mountain and river martial spirit. Dai Yuling was accepted as a disciple by an expert of her mountain. This was actually a kind of opportunity. It was better to go back and cultivate. Although dealing with Tian Chao should not be a problem, Tian Chao was only ranked 50th in the outer sect. The difficulties he faced might be greater than he imagined, although the flame deity looked down on him, and even couldn't be bothered to suppress him because his aptitude was not good enough. But He Sua was different. He Sua would definitely continue to find trouble with him. If Tian Chao couldn't do it, he might call for someone stronger. If a half-step master really came, he really wouldn't be a match. At this time, The sky was already hazy, and the moonlight outside the window was very bright. After Zhao Ji and Zhao Ting left, they did not return. Wu Xiang went out on a mission. Only Ling Xiao was left in the room. He locked the door, then sat cross-legged on the bed and began to cultivate. Right now, the fastest way to increase his strength was to advance to the 9th level of the martial vein. Before he came, he was about to break through, so he simply swallowed 3 Heaven Essence, bone-changing pills. While cultivating the Heavenly Dragon Golden Body, he intended to use the Snow Lotus Truth to break through the shackles of his cultivation. At this time, his cultivation was stronger than before, and his body was also stronger than before. Therefore, he did not need Old Man Bai Yun to protect him. He could even create 2 doppelgangers and use the Shadow Cultivation secret technique to continue practicing the Divine Hell King's Fist and the Bronze Sword Manipulation technique. There was still one move of the Divine Hell King Fist that he had not comprehended. He believed that with the benefits he had obtained from the God Sealing Catalog, he should be able to easily comprehend it. After all, he had easily comprehended 2 moves of a gold grade martial art like the Snow Lotus Sword Art. This Divine Hell King Fist was only a quasi-gold grade martial art, so it was even easier to comprehend. As for the Bronze Sword Controlling Art, he had not cultivated it after obtaining it. The main reason was that time was too tight. In order to increase his cultivation, he had temporarily put it aside. In the Moon Pavilion of the Outer Sect, his understanding of martial arts was also clearer and more detailed. In the past, he always felt that the Bronze Sword Controlling Art should be a quasi-transcendent martial art, which was a quasi-gold grade martial art. Its power was comparable to a transcendent martial art, which was a gold grade martial art. But now he knew that the Bronze Sword Controlling Art was actually a gold grade martial art. Moreover, it was a superior gold grade martial art. It was actually right that he did not cultivate it in the past. If he had cultivated it earlier, based on his knowledge and experience at that time, it would have been very difficult to cultivate. But it was different now. After observing many battles between transcendent martial artists and comprehending the God Sealing Catalog, his understanding of gold-grade martial arts was already very deep. The cultivation this time was not as painful as when he was in the White Cloud Monastery. The Heaven Essence bone-changing pill only gave him a slightly more numb feeling. This meant that his body was indeed much stronger than before. After a night, Ling Xiao's cultivation was already close to the limit of the 8th level martial vein. He was almost 1 foot into the 9th level martial vein. However, it seemed that he was still lacking something and was still unable to break through. However, the cultivation results of the Avatar were astonishing. He had already thoroughly comprehended the last move of the Divine Prison King Fist, Ghost King Annihilation. When this move was used, it was simply the combination of the previous 4 moves. A terrifying Ghost King would appear in the opponent's mind. At the same time, it would be accompanied by ox head, horse face, black and white impermanence. In addition, there would be a large number of ghost soldiers and ghost generals. One could imagine that when Ling Xiao used this punch, martial artists with weaker souls would probably collapse on the spot. As for the Bronze Sword Controlling Art, he had also successfully cultivated it to the peak of the Small Success stage, which was the 3rd level. After all, this was a superior gold grade martial art. It still needed time to slowly cultivate. After cultivating the Bronze Sword Controlling Art to the Great Perfection stage, the flying sword could be transformed into 36 rays. Moreover, the lethality of each ray was not inferior to the main body. Not only that, he could also comprehend the Heavenly Dipper sword formation and control it. Chapter 256. According to Ling Xiao's estimation, the power of the Heavenly Dipper sword formation would not be inferior to that of a top gold rank martial art. The key was that the sword formation would have a special effect of being able to absorb the power of heaven and earth, which was even more wonderful. The special effect of the Heavenly Dipper sword formation was to absorb the power of heavenly lightning. As for the specific effect, Ling Xiao had not tried it yet, so he did not dare to say. As the sun rose, Ling Xiao moved his stiff body and walked out of the stone house. Wu Xiang dragged his tired body back. He did not know where he had gone for the entire night, but he looked very tired. "Senior brother, what kind of work are you doing? Why is it so hard?" Ling Xiao saw that there were many calluses on Wu Xiang's hands. They did not look like they were caused by cultivation at all. Instead, they looked more like they were ground out from hard work, so he could not help but ask. Wu Xiang shook his head and smiled bitterly. He did not know if he could not say it or if he did not have the strength to say it. Ling Xiao helped him into the house. Just as he put him on the bed, the wooden door was suddenly kicked open. Wu Xiang was so frightened that he stood up from the bed. Ling Xiao also looked outside the door in surprise. "If you want to find fault, so be it. Why do you have to go against the door? This is public property. Aren't you afraid of being punished?" Standing outside the door was naturally Tian Chao. Behind Tian Chao were 3 people. However, their cultivation bases were not high. They were only at the middle 9th level of the martial vein. Speaking of which, it was embarrassing. In the past, the middle 9th level of the martial vein was already considered an absolute expert. However, here it seemed somewhat insignificant. "Ling Xiao, we found out that Cold Plum did not return last night. We suspect that she betrayed the sect. You have to give us an explanation for this." Tian Chao's voice was unquestionable, as if his words were an imperial edict that could not be violated. Wu Xiang could not help but feel worried. This Tian Chao was clearly trying to pull a banner and pull a tiger's skin. He was trying to pin a groundless crime on Ling Xiao's head. However, this was really a reason. Even if it was investigated later, it would still be reasonable. After all, Tian Chao could be considered a member of the outer sect law enforcement team. Although he was just a small fry, it was perfectly justifiable for him to do this. If Ling Xiao did not accept it, he would probably be forcefully taught a lesson. Tian Chao's coming here was probably what he had in mind. Hee, it's so lively today. I've just returned, and I've already encountered such a thing. Coincidentally, the 2nd Prince Zhao Ting, 3rd Prince Zhao Ji, as well as the 4th Prince Zhao Yu, Princess Zhao Xi, and Suing. Seeing this scene, the 4th Prince could not help but clap his hands to clap. He was a person who loved to watch a good show. Wu Xiang wanted to step forward and be the peacemaker, but he was stopped by Ling Xiao. "Senior brother Wu, you should rest. It's just 3 or 4 small fries. They'll be dealt with in a moment." Hearing Ling Xiao's words, Wu Xiang could only swallow the words he was about to say. How was she going to sleep when the door was torn down? What arrogance! "The 3 of you, tie him up for me." Tian Chao sneered. If he could, he would be too lazy to make a move. After all, it was not a good reputation to bully the weak with the strong. Because of this, he had been taught a lesson by Elder by several times. Yes, the 3 people behind him walked out and tried to restrain Ling Xiao with a very fierce method. However, Ling Xiao only took a step forward. Suddenly, his body emitted a terrifying black light and a cold wind. This was the effect of the divine Prison King Fist. He did not need to use a gold-grade martial art to deal with 3 kittens. It was better to try the effect of the divine Prison King Fist. He had just comprehended the 5th move, Ghost King Extermination. He really wanted to find a strong opponent to practice with. At the same time, the 3 mid-stage 9th level martial vein martial artists stopped. Cold sweat broke out on their foreheads, and their faces were filled with fear. Ghost King Extermination. Ling Xiao roared and punched out with both fists. Suddenly, the surroundings were filled with ghostly wails and wolf howls. The surrounding outer disciples all retreated to the side because a terrifying image had formed in their minds. It was too terrifying. This was only the aura that leaked out. Boom! An explosive sound rang out. The 3 mid-stage 9th level martial vein martial artists were all blasted out of the stone house. Not only were they seriously injured, but even after falling to the ground, their bodies continued to tremble because the terrifying image in their minds was still there. All of you are trash. Trash. Even though he said that, Tian Chao's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He found it hard to imagine why a peak 8th level martial vein stage martial master would give him such pressure when he was clearly a late stage 9th level martial vein stage martial master. Why did he have the urge to run away? No, he had to attack. Otherwise, this fear would grow deeper and deeper. Mixed Essence Palm. This was the gold grade martial art that Master Bai Yun had once used. It was called a transcendent martial art in the secular world. In fact, it was just a beginner gold grade martial art. But even so, there was no doubt that it was powerful. For most people who had just joined the Yuehua school, they would inevitably feel fear when they saw such a move. A pure energy formed a round ball in Tian Chao's right hand. It was especially obvious that it was full of destructive power. Ghost King Extermination. Ling Xiao was still using Ghost King Extermination. He was not proficient in using this move, so there was a small mistake. He planned to repeat it until he completely mastered this move. He punched out with both fists. A black wind wrapped around his fists and then turned into a ghost-like shape that pounced on Tian Chao. Bang! The Mixed Essence Palm and Ghost King Extermination met halfway, and the two forces produced a strange explosive effect. Ling Xiao took 2 steps back and stabilized his body. Tian Chao also took 2 steps back, but suddenly he held his head and screamed. In terms of the surface attack, the two of them should be evenly matched. However, the destruction of the soul caused by Ghost King Extermination was impossible for Tian Chao to defend against. Puff! Tian Chao directly bit his tongue and then spat out a mouthful of bloody saliva. Finally, he managed to expel that terrifying soul force from his body. Ling Xiao was a little surprised. Tian Chao was indeed much stronger than the 9th level martial vein experts in the secular world. At the very least, Ming Tian could not do this in the past. Lin Zhe and Wan Ben could not do it either. He was surprised, but Tian Chao was shocked. This expert, who was ranked 50th in the outer sect, really did not expect that Ling Xiao, who was at the peak of the 8th level martial vein, could make him so embarrassed. There were not many disciples in the Yuehua school, but there were more than 1,000 outer sect disciples. Tian Chao was really strong to be ranked 50th. The new and old outer sect disciples watching the battle were also shocked. This was a result that none of them had expected. Su Ying's expression was not very good. She had hoped that Tian Chao could teach Ling Xiao a lesson, at least to vent her anger. But now it seemed that Tian Chao could not be counted on. Ling Xiao was stronger than she had imagined. The 50th in the outer sect is just SOSO. You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.